Excuse me. Use that one.
Do that one. Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to Education, Energy, and the Environment, and I always say, and elections, E-Quad or Triple E Committee in the Senate. Let me start with just a few things. First, if this would make noise, if you could please make sure that during committee hearings it does not make noise. Second, just a reminder to anyone testifying, you're way smarter at many of these issues than we might be, so please try not to use acronyms unless you explain what you're talking about. Your goal is to explain and persuade, and if we don't know what you're talking about, then you are less effective than you could be. Third, we are live streaming, so when someone is on camera at the panel there, if you're sitting anywhere near behind, you are going to be on camera live streaming at home. So just a reminder of that. And just a few more things. First off, the chair, Brian Feldman, had to attend to something urgently at home, and so he is not going to be in today. I will be chairing except for when my 4 bills are up. So we're going to start with not my bills, and then we'll pivot, and then we'll come back. And then the last thing, since I have the chair right now, I just want to welcome all the folks from Leadership Montgomery who are with us in Annapolis today. If you want to stand up, we're really glad you're here. Thank you for what you do. With that, I'm going to put on my reading glasses so I can see the lineup for the bills. And we are going to start with there is not a 1. There are 2 2s.
Senate Bill 80.
It says 3. Oh, number of witnesses. Oh, this is, sorry, thank you. Okay, we are going to start with Senate Bill 80, Maryland Public Ethics Law, Financial Disclosure Statements, State Officials, and the person, let's see. We are going to start off with Nancy Faulkner, Jennifer Algier.
Yes.
Excellent. Welcome to Triple E, or E-Quad. We're glad to have you here. We do not have a sponsor presenting this bill, so can we show 2 minutes? Okay, you're each going to be on, it's a departmental bill. We'll put you each on a flexible 2 minutes since you don't have a senator explaining the bill at the beginning. So you may begin your testimony in either order. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Kagan, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Algier. I'm the Executive Director of the State Ethics Commission, and I'm pleased to be joined on the panel today by the Deputy State Court Administrator, Nancy Faulkner, from the Administrative Office of the Courts. We are here today in support of the State Ethics Commission's lone departmental bill this year, Senate Bill 80. This bill clarifies that the Administrative Office of the Courts administers the financial disclosure provisions and public records inspection provisions of the public ethics law for judicial officials and candidates to be judicial officials. State judicial officials and candidates file their financial disclosure forms electronically through a system that is exclusively maintained and administered by the Administrative Office of the Courts. The State Ethics Commission does not have access to that filing system at all and has no authority over judicial officials. Currently, Section 5610C of the Public Ethics Law requires that a copy of each financial disclosure statement filed by a state judicial official be transmitted by the Administrative Office of the Court to the State Ethics Commission. This legislation removes that requirement. The Administrative Office of the Courts is in the best position to establish both procedures for public inspection of these financial disclosure statements and provide prompt notification to judicial officials and judicial candidates if their forms are reviewed. The State Ethics Commission does not have the same ability to directly and promptly notify judicial officials of public inspection of a copy of their financial disclosure statement. Senate Bill 80 does not change the disclosure requirements for judicial officials or judicial candidates. Senate Bill 80 does not remove a citizen's ability to inspect those records. This legislation preserves transparency while increasing government efficiency and security for financial disclosure filers by ensuring the most direct inspection notification process for judicial officials and candidates for judicial office. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Faulkner, the Deputy State Court Administrator. I am testifying here today on behalf of the Maryland Judiciary in support of Senate Bill 80. The bill will help streamline the process of managing the financial disclosure statements that are filed within the judicial branch. Current law requires that the judiciary send duplicate copies over to state ethics of anyone who has filed, such as judges, judicial appointees, and judicial candidates. It's a duplicative process, and changing the rule and the law, rather, would help streamline the process and make it much more efficient. The judiciary currently maintains permanent copies of these records, and we have them available to the public for inspection as requested. The current law places an unnecessary administrative burden on the State Ethics Commission, and by changing the law, it would place this obligation where it belongs, solely with the judiciary. The judiciary is well positioned to carry out its responsibility utilizing existing resources, and we think that it will save both time and money. We are grateful also that this bill clarifies that the Supreme Court has the ability to designate who will carry out this important work within the judiciary, and we join our colleagues with state ethics, and we encourage you to pass Senate Bill 80. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to testify today and welcome any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Faulkner. Are there questions for either? Yes, Senator Carrozza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the testimony, and I do understand what we're trying to accomplish here. My only question is, since I think the general public sometimes automatically defaults and goes to the State Ethics Commission when they are seeking to the records of certain elected officials or judges. And I think what you're saying is right now it's duplicative because those financial disclosure statements of the judiciary are on both the AOC has them as well as the State Ethics Commission. And what you're saying is let's just keep the judge's financial disclosures in the administrative office of the court system and not be duplicative. Am I understanding this correctly?
That is correct, and another reason is for prompt notification of public inspection to the filer. Because our agencies operate in completely separate electronic financial disclosure filing systems, the State Ethics Commission cannot notify a judicial officer or a candidate for judicial office that someone has looked at their financial disclosure statement promptly.
Right, I understand that.
So that is another.
No, and I understand that as far as the efficiency. My only question is, if someone just by default goes to the State Ethics Committee to, seeking the financial disclosure of judges and or candidates, and they're not, are they directed then, or does someone direct them to the administrative office of the courts rather than just kind of say,
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, we don't handle that,
Right, both of our offices are in Annapolis. Yes, they are directed there.
I agree about, the eliminating the duplication, but I do think you have people who, they worked in a certain system for so long, they would automatically default and that they would be directed.
Right. And Senator, I can add that we did check our inspection records, and since 2019, 2 people have come to the State Ethics Commission's
Only
office
2.
to seek copies of judicial officials'
So you just
financial
want to
disclosure. It's just
clean
not
it
really
up now.
done. We're
Okay,
just trying
thank you.
to clean up. And one thing I would like to add, if I may, is there is no fiscal cost to either of our agencies for this bill. So it is 0 state dollars and government efficiency.
Are there any other questions for these witnesses on this bill? Seeing none, that completes the hearing on Senate Bill 80. Thank you both for being with us today and for what you do year-round.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
Before we go on, let me just explain to those in the audience that there are some empty chairs now. There may be other folks coming and going among the senators, and that's because we sometimes have hearings in other committees. So it's not for lack of interest or engagement in your testimony or in this legislation. So just wanted you to know that. The next bill before us is Senate Bill 11. It is about Fair Campaign Financing Fund, and Jared Demarinis is our only oral witness. He's our State Administrator of Elections. Mr. Demarinis, you may take the time you need. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that this is also a perfect time to call it Quad E because of the Olympics with the, no, just Quad E because you have the Quad God on the Olympics right now. So, you know, you can tie it in with the Olympics and, you know, so yes, it's a perfect timing. Great time to rebrand and get elections in here. So this one here is Jared Demarinis, State Administrator of Elections. For the record, Senate Bill 11 is a simple bill. It just moves back the date in which we can distribute public funds for a publicly financed gubernatorial candidate from January 1st of the year of the election to July 1st, the year before the election. This just matches what we do on the county levels. It seems to, you know, be working well there, and it just allows publicly financed candidates access to funds a little bit sooner. That's all this bill does, and I'm happy to answer any questions and looking for a favorable ruling.
Questions for our State Administrator on this very complicated and controversial bill?
Right.
Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Demarinis. That completes the hearing on Senate Bill 11. Next up is Senate Bill 100. Once again, Mr. Demarinis, this is about early voting centers, bus
Yes.
stops.
Yes, Jared Demarinis, State Administrator of Elections for the record. This basically has that if a county has a fixed bus route and there is an early voting center within a half a mile of that fixed bus route, that the bus has to stop in front of the early voting center during early voting. So it's just very simple. It increases accessibility to those vote centers, and it's a good government and voting rights bill as well. So.
Are there questions for Mr. Demarinis to make sure that our early voting centers are mass transit accessible? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Demarinis. That completes the hearing on SB 100. Again, for those in the audience, you might be interested to know that just if one person testifies, that does not mean that he's the only one who's interested. We have several pages of testimony. Many people prefer to just put it in writing for us to read and don't take the time to come to Annapolis or speak online. But you will see some of that a little later. Okay, the next bill is Senate Bill 153. Once again, it's Mr. Demarinis. This is about campaign finance ethics, oversight and control of campaign fund.
Yes.
Mr. Demarinis.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is Jared Demarinis, State Administrator of Elections for the record. This bill does a few things. One, it just clarifies the name. It changes the name from chairman to chair to a more gender-neutral name there. But also, it really helps modernize what campaigns really do and the role of the treasurer. It makes the treasurer know that they are the financial steward of the campaign entity, kind of the CFO, that they have the ability then to appoint agents to help them in their duties in working on the campaign, but those agents have to be done in writing prior to any sort of disbursements or any execution of their duties so that we are aware of who the authorized people are for the campaign. And basically all those agents then owe a fiduciary duty to the campaign as well. So this clearly spells out all the fiduciary duties of these individuals to make sure that they're taking care of your campaign finance funds in a correct manner in accordance with the law, and that when people give you money that they know that it'll be done and used for electoral purposes. So that's, and then lastly, it also makes just that, it kind of clarifies the role of the chair of a PAC, just to make sure that, you know, because right now it was kind of vague as to who actually has authority of making disbursements for a PAC or who has the final say. So basically the chair of a PAC, which is a political action committee, I was going to get there, that the chair has the final authority. And this mirrors exactly the same responsibility that the chair has at a central committee. So
unanimous. Senator Carozza.
Thank you, Jared, and thank you for the bill, because I think you receive a lot of our questions on, when you're calling and you have a treasurer, but you also have other people that are either, writing checks or accepting checks. When, in the bill, can you, I was reading the fiscal note very quickly. Can you just clarify that, kind of those roles and responsibilities or that authority?
So basically, right now, the treasurer's responsibility is still the same. That they have the ability, they're still the responsible officer.
Right.
But being the financial steward means that they're now kind of like the CFO of the
Right.
campaign, and that they have a duty then to make sure that everything is done in accordance with the law. But they have the ability now to have agents or designated agents to assist them, to collect the monies, to deposit checks, to help file reports with them.
Which could be other campaign staff.
Which could be other campaign
But it
staff.
has to be kind of formalized, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, and so that those individuals also now know that they have like in the law, have a fiduciary duty, because now they're touching funds or have the ability to have access to funds, that, that they understand they have legal responsibilities and that it has to be done in accordance, and that these are not your funds, this is a campaign's funds, and, and their activities will be disclosed.
So in practicality, the way you see this working is the formal agreement, or to have another agent other than the treasurer, is some type of like
employment contract.
Okay.
Like just kind of being like, this is your roles. It kind of clearly defines the role of an individual that is, that the treasurer has granted authority for. And because there could be some penalties with access of money, theft, and we've seen that occur, that this clearly then states that these are roles that they had to accept and put it in writing, so that there is no question that, oh, I told them to do this, and the person said, no, that was never a part of my roles or responsibilities. This kind of makes
Okay.
it so that you have to put it in writing, so that there is no question
Thank you.
in those scenarios.
Jared, just to clarify, once you put it in writing, do you officially file it with SBE? Do you share it or file it somewhere?
You share it with us so that we have access to it. It's just like an email or
Yep.
like a PDF at that point there. We just store it and just
Yep.
go, we don't look at it or say like, oh, you're missing this words, but we just have it in case of, like, break glass in case of emergency if there's a
Perfect.
theft type of
Perfect.
deal.
Thank you. Senator Brooks.
Thanks, Jared. So this clearly, I guess, defines that the treasurer is the financial steward?
Yes.
Okay, and that decisions that are made, well, I guess the candidate will still have some influence or some input, but the treasurer is the one that's going to be held responsible?
Do they have the access to all the funds?
Right.
The treasurer is the gatekeeper, making sure, but like basically by saying that you're just a financial steward, you're the chief financial officer of the campaign.
I see.
Like they don't have to, the candidate can still direct, like, I want to spend money on this TV ad, right? The treasurer is not going in there going, no, but like the treasurer is making sure that the check gets written and moves over there correctly, and that all the monies get deposited into the bank account, and that they prepare the reports and making sure that the bank statements and, that part is all, like
Okay.
a business portion of it.
Okay, all right, thanks, Chair.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, that completes the hearing on Senate Bill 153. Oh, no, Senator Carozza does have another question,
When-
please.
I was reading the fiscal note, so bear with me. On the appointment of a campaign manager, it says that it's clarifying that a campaign manager may be appointed by a candidate or chair of the campaign finance entity. And then it says requiring that the form making the appointment be filed with the State Board of Elections rather than, I guess it would be beforehand, was it required to be filed with the local board?
No, it was always filed, but no one really follows that. But the interesting part about that law is that it says an individual may appoint a campaign manager. So I could appoint your campaign manager and file a form. So I just wanted to clarify, like, I don't care who you appoint as a campaign manager, but it should be you and not some random individual. That was the only clarification part there, because it just said an individual may appoint a campaign
Oh, you're
manager.
saying, you're clarifying that it has to be appointed by the candidate or?
Exactly.
Okay, that's
right.
the change.
Right,
Okay, got
exactly.
it. Okay.
Okay, Senator Crozo, you good?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, now that completes the
Thank
hearing
you.
on Senate Bill 153. Next up, Jared, you're on a roll here, but you get some company on this one.
Exactly,
So,
yes.
Senate Bill 91, State Board of Elections, this is the address confidentiality program. This is a really important program. And again, for our folks watching at home or in here, if at some point one of you can make sure you define what that is and who's included. So Jared Demarinis, why don't you go first, and then Michael Laurie is with us from the Secretary of State's office, the Deputy Secretary of State.
Jared Demarinis, State Administrator of Elections, and this is a departmental bill with the Secretary of State's office here. Basically, this is a program here for survivors of domestic violence, and that they are able to still vote but have their address not publicly disclosed. And because our voter registration rolls are publicly available for candidates and campaigns, but this is a program that is, I guess, administered by the Secretary of State's office, and then we then use making sure that the individuals still have the right to vote in a safe and secure manner and without any fear of intimidation or harassment. This is a very simple one here. It just basically says that the State Board is going to designate a point person for this entire program, because in a sense, instead of having the 24 jurisdictions monitor or handle this issue here, we wanted to make sure that the State Board has a single point of person, and that these individuals can then just reach out to the State Board. The State Board would be able to work with the local boards of election in order to help making sure that they have the ability to vote, change their registration, get the right ballots. But instead of having it in 24, this is just designating that the State Board has a single point, and it's easier for public outreach and communication with the Secretary of State's office, because then they can just have, instead of contact one of your 24, you just contact the State Board of Election, and then we will do the back end work for you. So it's streamlining it, and it's a good voter service bill as well.
Not on the clock, Deputy Secretary of State, and I probably should have had you go first, but in any case, we're glad you're here.
It's okay. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee. My name is Michael Laurie, for the record, Deputy Secretary of State. This is our only departmental bill. Thank you, State Board of Elections, for joining us, because they're the ones who have to technically administer this and write the regulations. But all it does is, in many ways, codify an existing practice we have, but there's turnover within State Board of Elections like any entity. We want to make sure there's one person. It also sends a signal to the participants that this person's trained and that they can communicate with the local boards of elections. So we really think it's important not just to have someone there, but to have them specifically trained, and so that the participants know they can also safely communicate with this person. It doesn't really change the access to the records. It just makes sure that someone is there who understands how to deal with these participants, so that we can streamline. If someone's coming to us late for a registration right near a deadline, or if they need a mail-in ballot, they didn't get it because we forward their mail, this can get them to the right people in a more swift manner.
Thank you. Question for you, Mr. Laurie, from me. Mr. Demarinis talked about survivors of domestic abuse, which is certainly one of the categories.
Yes.
But there are other categories, are there not? Like
Yes.
judges and.
Well, so there's a separate program for judges, but judges could qualify under an expanded authority. I believe it passed 4 or 5 years ago, where if you are threatened, and so it's a subjective fear, that you are now eligible. It was expanded a few years back for victims of human trafficking as well. Most victims of human trafficking don't self-identify. Domestic violence was historically the category of people that qualify, but it is technically broader. So some public officials
Yes.
who feel threatened also can qualify for the program. But to be participants of the program, you need to move. And that is usually the threshold that people don't like to cross.
Yes, thank you. Senator Carozza, you have a question?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Deputy Secretary. It's good to see you. And I want to commend Secretary Lee and the whole team on continuing to prioritize the address confidentiality program. My question is more just, I'd like to understand process. Like, is this a matter of, since this program is in the Secretary of State's office, you have the names of those that were protecting their address. Is there like an automatic follow-up with the State Board of Elections? So, like, is it, is that how the process works? And then do you work that same way with other agencies and departments?
Well, so with the State Board of Elections, normally we wouldn't necessarily need to reach out to them for every participant, but if there is a problem, we need to necessitate a conversation with the local boards of elections usually. This is one point of contact, which is really helpful for that communication. We obviously don't have the records of the local boards of elections, and they certainly don't have the records of our participants. So they do know which precinct they're in, for instance. That's because they call our office if there's a question and find out. But the proxy address is our address, 16 Francis Street. So that obviously is not your precinct. So we need to make sure that they have the right ballot when they vote. So that communication happens through the process of our program. But this is mostly also in case there's a problem. So when you
So is it a case where someone, let's say a victim of domestic violence, is that person already in your system, or are they first coming to State Board of Elections to say, I want to vote, but?
Well, no, so you would have to be a participant first to avail yourself to this. And so they would have our proxy address, but the real address is shielded. But we would have to communicate to the local boards which precinct they're in.
Okay.
So that would be a communication between our office and their office, and this helps to facilitate that communication so that we make sure, and the same thing happens with like school boards. You want to make sure that they are in the right school district, for instance. So we need to make sure that we are verifying the actual address without actually revealing what the address is.
But it only has to happen once as opposed to every.
Well, exactly. And if there's an issue or they get the wrong ballot, for instance, we can help remedy that through this point of contact.
So there's a first interaction from the very beginning between your office and the State Board of Elections. But then once that interaction takes place, you don't have to do it for every election.
Exactly. And hopefully, for most people, there's no need to go through the intermediary necessarily. But if the local Board of Elections reaches out, because they have our proxy address, they will find out which precinct they're in at least without, again, revealing that information publicly. We're very sensitive with the actual address information.
I'm good.
Senator Brooks, you're good?
Yes, I'm good.
Excellent. All right, so that completes the hearing on Senate Bill 91. Thank you, Mr. Demarinis. Thank you, Mr. Laurie. Next up, we're going to go to Senator Augustine for Senate Bill 241, Individuals Released from State Correctional Facilities, Automatic Restoration of Voter Registration. Joining Senator Augustine at the dais, Joanne Antoine from Common Cause, Antoine Quarles from HELP, Michelle Whitaker from Ranked Choice Voting Maryland, and Marcia Briley Out for Justice. And there will be additional witnesses and panels. I don't see Joanne. Christopher, are you? Michelle, you can come on up. Mr. Dews, are you joining us?
So,
Or not?
Madam Vice Chair,
Please.
I've been told that those folks are testifying, most of them are testifying across the.
Got it, on the House side?
Which is fine, we'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
okay?
think we have a lot of witnesses for this bill in favor, and we have no witnesses in person or virtually who are unfavorable.
Yeah, I
for
know,
whatever-
so we're going to be real brief.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. We're glad you're here. This is an important issue.
Absolutely.
So the first panel can come on up, and if we're missing people, we will have them join if they arrive on time. Senator Augustine, welcome back to EEE or EQuad. It's good to have you here. You may begin.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the committee. Senator Malcolm Augustine here on behalf of Senate Bill 241. Which the Vice Chair already basically started the conversation around it. This is just around registering folks who have finished paying their debt to society. So historically, we have about 15,000 Marylanders who are released from prison each year. And it's just very important that we've already made a choice. We've made a decision in our state that for those Marylanders who have paid their debt to society, that they will receive back the franchise of the vote. Right now, mechanically, the way that it works is that when an individual is incarcerated, that information is transmitted by the court and some others to the State Board of Elections with a certain amount of information. And the State Board of Elections then will remove that individual from the voting rolls if they are registered. Now, what this piece of legislation does is that, in essence, and it's done like on a monthly basis. So what this legislation does is essentially say, okay, we understand that that's the process when an individual has, because they are convicted of a felony and incarcerated, they at that time they have lost the vote, but that vote is returned when they have paid their debt to society, and we just are just putting people back where they were. So they were registered to vote before. We want to create the mechanism that gets them back to being registered when they, after they have completed their, their time that they have served. And so what it does is it requires the Department of Public Safety and Corrections to send a list of individuals released from state correctional facilities to the State Board of Elections. And then it requires the State Board of Elections to identify those individuals registered to vote prior to their incarceration, restore their voter registration at the new address and granting them that active voter status that they had prior. It ensures that each individual will receive a voter notification card detailing their registration and status, eligibility to vote, and the elections, and with instructions for if they choose to decline registration or updating that address. What I will also just say is that, Madam Chair, this has been done in concert with, or rather we've received feedback from a couple of different groups that I just would want to raise to you all. One is that there is a letter that comes from the Office of the Attorney General, which indicates support for this legislation as it works within their framework of how they are trying to assist with getting people back in returning citizens to have successful reentry, and that this is a part of that successful reentry for them. We also did receive feedback from the Department of the Corrections, and the Department of Corrections asked that, because the bill as drafted says that they must respond, share information on a weekly basis, and we have modified that. We are seeking to modify that to monthly, which is the same requirement that they have that's coming into them, and that's more consistent. That makes all the sense in the world to us. There also is a series of requests, because this, again, like I said, this has been done in concert with, there was information that was shared by the State Board of Elections where they too have provided some feedback, and that feedback has been submitted to this committee for its consideration as amendment, which does a few different things. One, it does, like was said with the State Board, with the Department of Corrections, which is to change it to the monthly basis, again, kind of in keeping with how it comes to them in the first place. And then it's a little more specific about the information that they need in order to be able to execute on this re-registration process, and to do so on that month basis. And then also just some other kind of like clarifying language that works for them. And then another thing that it does do, Madam Vice Chair, is it also does move back the effective date. And the reason why it moves back the effective date is, Madam Vice Chair, the State Board of Elections is going through this, significant overhaul of its systems, and this will then have it more aligned with that process if we do that, which should really remove like a lot of those costs, because then it can be coordinated into what they're doing. Because right now this has a fiscal note that does demonstrate that there's be some cost to it. We think that would mitigate that, and that'll get us into the place where we want to be. And so with those amendments, Madam Vice Chair. I'm asking for a favorable report on something that I think is very straightforward. I mean, the folks have paid their debt to society. They were already registered. We took it because of it. It's just very simple, straightforward. Just put it back. Just put it back. And I'll ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Augustine. I saw that Joanne Antoine did come in, but we already called you, so we'll bring you up for the next panel. Senator Augustine, do you have a preference for the order, or should we just start and go down the line?
No, just feel.
Okay, I think we ought to start with my friend Michelle Whitaker then, and then we'll go up the line. Sorry. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Michelle Whitaker. I'm the Executive Director for Ranked Choice Voting Maryland. While we focus on voting reforms to fully allow voters to fully express their vote, we also recognize the importance of ensuring the right to vote for all eligible voters. SB 241 is an important bill and a step forward to restoring the rights for those citizens who are returning after paying their debt to society through and being able to fully participate in the democratic process. Voting is a cornerstone of our representative democracy, and it is a fundamental right that we should not create additional burdens or hurdles for any voter in Maryland. We believe that when returning citizens who are eligible face these burdens, which you will hear from other members of the panel who will share either their personal experiences or the experiences that they've had with other folks that they know in their communities, we disenfranchise our community and we lack that important voice on issues that are impacting them, their family, our neighbors, our friends, and we need to make sure that everyone has that right and their right to vote is restored. So we urge a favorable report. We thank you for your time, and we thank Senator Augustine for his work on this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Whitaker. Next person in your fabulous Maryland scarf.
I've been getting that all day. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Good afternoon. My name is Kiana. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of this committee. My name is Kiana Johnson, and I am a Prince George's County resident. I'm also directly impacted by the criminal legal system and the Executive Director of Life After Release. I'm here in strong support of SB 241. In Maryland, voting rights are restored upon release of incarceration. That is the law. But a right that exists on paper is meaningless if the system fails to implement it clearly and consistently. In 2018, during a visit to Parole and Probation Office in Temple Hills, Maryland, I witnessed something very concerning that day. I witnessed Supervisor Brown telling individuals that, and particularly me, that you had to wait 7 years after incarceration in order to vote. Now, something to note in that is that that was in 2018, and we all here know because we all worked very hard to get the bill passed to restore those rights in 2016. However, we had someone who was entrusted by our government to parole people, right? To watch over people. And the information that she gave that day was incorrect. And that stuck with me for a very, very long time. And I know it's a lot of years later, but the point here is that misinformation, when it comes from someone in authority like that, people usually believe it and they usually disengage from the system itself. That moment revealed something bigger and deeper to me. It exposed an administrative failure and a gap in the system, and this law will address that gap by requiring coordination between the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services and the State Board of Elections. This bill removes ambiguity and ensures the individuals are able to automatically or to restore their vote. For that reason, I'm asking for a favorable vote on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. You're up next. Okay.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nicole Porter. I'm Senior Director of Advocacy with the Sentencing Project, which is a national research and advocacy organization, but I'm also a Maryland resident and live in District 47. And here to urge a favorable report for House Bill 241. I've submitted written testimony, so really want to focus my comments this afternoon on the community safety benefits of this bill. There is, in fact, a community safety benefit to guaranteeing the vote for people who are legal system impacted, including persons completing a felony sentence while in state custody. Voting is among several pro-social behaviors for legal system impacted persons, like getting a college education, that is associated with reducing future impact with the criminal legal system, and having the right to vote for voting is related to reduced recidivism or returns to prison for persons with a criminal legal history. As you all know, Maryland is among several states that ban voting for persons in prison with a felony conviction while allowing the vote to people in the community. And Senate Bill 241 would continue Maryland's leadership in guaranteeing voting rights for certain marginalized communities, as Maryland is among 26 states in Washington, D.C. that has expanded the vote to persons completing a felony while in community since 1997. Part of the steps to guarantee those rights to vote are to ensure access to voter registration and ballot access, as is would be governed by Senate Bill 241, would align Maryland with states that have taken recent steps in the last few years. Louisiana lawmakers, for example, passed legislation requiring the State Department of Public Safety and Corrections to inform individuals who have completed their sentence of their right to vote. And just last year, Washington state lawmakers adopted a bill similar to Senate Bill 241 that allows for the State Department of Corrections and Jails to restore registration to people who would otherwise be eligible to vote. And for that, the Sentencing Project urges a favorable report for Senate Bill 241.
Thank you, Ms. Porter, and wrapping up this panel.
Yes, I'm Monica Cooper, and I urge a favorable vote on Senate Bill 241. Thank you. It's been a long day. I don't even remember the daggone bill. 241. Thank you. Appreciate you. But anyway, my name is Monica Cooper. I'm a formerly incarcerated woman, and I'm also an elected official serving on the Baltimore City State Central Committee. I was elected in 2018 and then re-elected. The people didn't have enough of me. So they decided to re-elect me, and I think that that's one of my proudest moments. But besides that, being able to vote was the absolute best thing that could happen to me. Besides being able to serve my God, the next best thing that happened to me was being able to vote. I can't tell you what it feels like to be a part of this process. Even though we find ourselves challenged, even though we may not even have another election, I promise you that when you restore votes to people and give them that opportunity to vote, they will be the neighbors that you want them to be, the taxpayers you want them to be. They want the city roads the way that you do. They want the schools to be safe. They want the homeowner's tax, the homestead tax. I'm a new homeowner, so I want that tax to favor me as well. So all these things formerly incarcerated people want, and this is what they think about when they're in there. I mentioned earlier in my testimony, they are some of the most informed people you will ever imagine. But what has happened is, in 2016, the Baltimore Sun reported that they were expecting at least 40,000 returning citizens to vote once that bill had passed. But unfortunately, they're not coming to the polls in that way because of misinformation. If you allow them to be automatically restored as soon as they come out, you have yourself a brand new constituent. Think about that. You have yourself a brand new voting constituent. So be kind to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Thank you for your story, and thank you for your public service as an elected official.
I can't wait, man.
Congratulations
I can't wait.
to you.
I'm going to keep rocking. I appreciate you.
I love that. You know what? I bet you will.
Yes, ma'am.
You guys, we have several panels, but we want to take questions from each panel. So either for Senator Augustine or any of these panelists, Senator Brooks, followed by Senator Carrozza.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Mr. President Pro Tem, for the bill. Yeah, which, individuals would this impact? Would it be just people in, I guess you'd say, the Patuxent Institute, Baltimore City, just Maryland's? It doesn't have any impact on federally incarcerated people, just state, right?
These are folks who are in state felonies, right? Incarcerated, that's our law. This is
right.
State, which relates to state law. Mm-hmm. And as has been shared, when they become incarcerated, the franchise of the vote is taken away for that period of time.
Right.
But when they have completed their sentence and they have come out, they are re-enfranchised. And all that this piece of legislation does is just say that there's that process on the front end where they're removed from the rolls when they are there. let's just put them back. They
Right,
completed
I see.
it, just put them back. It would be state law and for any of our state facilities.
Yeah, and just a comment, I love the educational component part of it, where the Correctional Institute has to provide them, make them aware that their voting rights have been reinstated.
Yes.
So that's good. All right, thanks. Good bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brooks. Senator Croza.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Augustine, for the bill and for your panelists. And I see the benefit of restoring the right to vote. So I want to preface my question that way, the value and the benefit. I'm a process person, as you know. And I also, as I'm thinking through the process, in addition to, as I look at this, I think it's also important that we have secure and accurate voting rolls. So when I look at, I'm looking at the process, and and the reason I'm bringing this up, because I think we have some challenges right now in keeping our current voter rolls clean, and I'm even talking about basics, removing dead people from the voting rolls as soon as possible. So knowing that there are some challenges already maintaining accurate and secure voting rolls, I was looking at the process here. And I know you said it's not a weekly basis, it's now a monthly basis. The Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services shall electronically transmit to the State Board, so this is coming to the State Board of Elections, a list that includes the name and new residential address of each individual who was released from incarceration at a state correctional facility in the immediately preceding week. So I'm looking at that there's then the assumption that there is a new residential address that is accurate. Is that the assumption right there?
Yes.
And are there any concerns in that sometimes there's a transition period from when someone is released and from where they end up? They maybe their first release, they may go live with a family member in Maryland somewhere, maybe a temporary facility, and then there may be a period of time, and then they've again have moved on. So I guess it looks like we're putting, we're kind of.
Can I respond to that?
And if I could just finish, this legislation is putting the onus on both the Department of Public Safety,
Sure,
as well as the Board of Elections, and just realizing the workload of both and the interest of some of us to really try to make sure we have secure and accurate voting rolls. I want to raise those questions. I think those are legitimate questions to raise.
Sure. Okay, a couple things. Corrections is supportive if we make the change to the monthly. That's a timeline that they can do. And again, like I said, it's in keeping with what happens on the front end when it's communicated, not by corrections, but by the courts to the Board of Elections to make sure that they have all of the information they need in order to do and keep it accurate the way that you said. That's all that we're asking from the corrections, for them to share the same information so that it can be accurate, Senator. The other thing that I will share with you is this. We are not seeking to treat these Marylanders any different than any other Marylander. So when I'll just make it personal. Well, I was going to say, because my niece is here today, so she's here, but she's too young. But let's talk about my kids, right? My kids are in college. They have to make the adjustments. We have to change they do have a responsibility. If they are going to change their voting, they have a responsibility to do that. And then we do have a Board of Elections that has a responsibility, of course, to manage that process. There's no reason for these Marylanders who have, they've paid their price, and they are now in the exact same posture as all of us, and they should be treated the exact same way.
I understand your point. I also just wanted to raise the challenges
That's fair,
of those
Senator.
voter rolls.
But that would be my reply to that.
Okay, I see no other questions for this panel. I want to thank you all, and thank you, Senator Augustine, for your leadership on this important issue. Sure. Joanne Antoine, you get to come up now. Antoine Quarles, Marcia Briley, let's fill as many chairs as we can here. Trina Selden, Gwendolyn Levi. Is there another chair? Yeshua Downey? We might be full now. Let's see. How close are we?
We're good.
And Nikki Tyree would be the last. I don't know if I saw Nikki here. Here we are, all the way in the back. So it might be, Nikki, you can try to squeeze a chair in, or we'll take you. Yeah, why don't we wait for the last two people? We'll bring you up in the next panel. Are we good? Okay. Joanne Antoine, why don't you start us off, if you're ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Kagan and members of the committee. For the record, Joanne Antoine, Executive Director of Common Cause Maryland, testifying in support of SB 241. I do want to apologize for running late, but obviously we are grateful to Senator Augustine for championing the bill. You know, as you've heard, we restored the right to vote, and obviously in 2021, we passed bipartisan legislation that was actually championed by Senator West to ensure that individuals inside have access to voting. You know, part of that legislation included a requirement that when you are coming home, that individuals be provided with a paper registration form. Now, like most voters, paper registration forms are not ideal, right? You have to mail them off, you have to go to a local board, and so forth, and this legislation removes that hurdle. While we have ensured that eligible voters know that they have the right to vote, there's confusion when they come home, and so forth, right? So, and as advocates, there is no clear way to target them, to make them aware, you know, and many of them end up being provided with misinformation. So all SB 241 does is use existing processes to ensure that we are using a secure process to inform them of their right to vote, that their registration is restored, and that others are provided with an opportunity to do the same. I did want to note for the record that in 2022, our coalition visited over 17 correctional facilities throughout the state, monitoring the voting process and, you know, helping with voter registration. I hope that one day some of the senators will be able to join us. But I think what we left with is that individuals of all political affiliations want to make their voices heard, and that they are looking for voting information when we go inside. So I would hope that, again, we prioritize ensuring that everyone who is eligible to vote, that they have meaningful access to the registration form, and I'd urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Antoine. And as I said before you arrived, there are senators and there are certainly advocates who are back and forth in other committees in the Senate or even in the House for advocates. So we're glad you're here. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Trina Selden, founder and executive director of Out for Justice, and I'm here in strong support of SB 241. Out for Justice is a community-based organization that works to engage and empower people impacted by the legal system so that they can fully participate in civic life. For nearly 20 years, we have advanced fair elections and helped remove barriers that exclude returning citizens, Black communities, and low-income Marylanders from our democracy. I know this issue personally. When I returned home from prison in 2003, reentry felt overwhelming. One of the most damaging barriers I faced was the loss of my right to vote. Even after completing probation, I was misinformed and denied the ability to register. At a critical moment in rebuilding my life, I was treated as if my voice no longer mattered. That experience led me to found Out for Justice. And since then, we have helped to advance reforms like Ban the Box and the Value My Vote Act, restoring voting rights to tens of thousands of Marylanders. These efforts show a simple truth, that people succeed when systems are designed to include them, not exclude them. SB 241 applies this lesson. It automatically restores voter registration for eligible individuals upon release and ensures they receive a clear notice and information. This matters because the period immediately after my release is unstable, and unnecessary barriers only create confusion and disengagement. This bill is about dignity, public safety, and community stability. Civic participation strengthens connections and reduces recidivism. SB 241 affirms that incarceration should not permanently sever someone's relationship with democracy. And for these reasons, I strongly urge a favorable report. Was
Ms.
SB
Selden, thank you
241. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your testimony, your story, and congratulations on your leadership over the last 23 years. Good for
Thank
you.
you.
Next witness, please. You can introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair and members of the Senate Committee. My name is Marsha Briley Savage, and I am here today. I serve as the Reentry Coordinator for Anne Arundel County, but I'm not on duty today. I'm here as an advocate. Just want to make sure I'm on record with that. I'm here in support, strong support of SB 241. I don't come to you with just theory. I come to you with over decades of frontline experience in how this process succeeds and how it fails. My commitment to this issue began in 2016 when the Maryland General Assembly restored the voting rights of over 40,000 Marylanders. I was then the Director of Reentry and Transition Services for DPSCS. I knew then that a law is only as strong as its implementation. I was the only official, and probably to this date, that mandated that the Board of Elections become a staple at reentry events, and that I also mandated that all my transition specialists were trained to be election volunteers so they could register individuals to vote. But today, working in Anne Arundel County detention facilities, I see why that manual effort just isn't enough. I see the systemic deadlocks that no amount of good intention can overcome without this bill. We are fighting against a digital desert. We ask people to register in a world where they are prohibited from holding a cell phone and where internet access is non-existent. We are asking them to participate in a modern democracy with tools from a century ago. We are also fighting against institutional resistance. Case managers, overwork, voter registration becomes another task on the top of a caseload. It becomes an optional burden. Last year, in collaboration with the Board of Election and Expand the Ballot Coalition with many of the people here, favorable support.
You know, in case we couldn't tell by everything else you said, Ms. Briley. Sir, you're next.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Antoine Qualls, and to the whole committee, thank y'all. I support Senate Bill 241 because it takes a step further to go to, as everyone has said, it has reunited them to reintegrate and be better citizens. Me, myself, once it's coming home and learning that I could vote and become active in voting, I came to take a valuable part to educate community for years that none of us thought we could vote, but never was told why we should vote or why we shouldn't vote. We just decided in ourselves, and because the convictions and things of this nature that went on, but inside this work, when we started doing Value My Vote and going back into correction centers, we was told that, like, people could vote, we just don't offer it. And I was like, that's insane because you're violating the constitutional right. Because every person has the right, because whether they're sentenced or not, still has the right to play their part, to have an electoral process, to be able to help from their community and educate from their community. Most of the times when watching news and things in the inside, for days and days and hours and hours and hours, our family come on phone calls and on visits and ask us, you know about this delegate, you know about this senator, who should we vote for? What should we know? And then we start communicating with each other and what you think, because all of us go back to these communities. Our families are still in these communities. So while inside, we're still playing a part. It's just we haven't been able to, like, directly under the registration be able to really play a part. And I think if this passes, this is how they can really play a part. It will help in reintegration, and you will have better citizens. And I am definitely one of those examples of being home for 10 years when after being a repeat offender for over 2 decades. And I ask you favorably support this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Quarles, and I like the name of your organization, HOPE, Helping Oppressed People Excel.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. All right. Good for you. Wrapping up the panel, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Gwendolyn Levi, and I'm a justice-impacted
Ms.
individual.
Levi, would you mind pulling the mic a little closer so everyone can hear you?
Hi.
Thank you.
My name is Gwen Levi, and I'm a justice-impacted individual. I served 9 years of a 16-year sentence on a 400-month sentence, a federal sentence. I served it at the Maryland Correctional Institution of Women, which had a reciprocal agreement between the feds and the state. During that time, I realized that many of us tracked legislation. We did not just track legislation. We listened to the news. We heard what was going on in our communities. We talked to our families. And because of the decisions made in these halls, affected all of our lives. It affected our health care, our education, our reentry preparation, our family connections. So we organized, we wrote letters, we advocated through the limited channels that we had, and I say limited because the one channel that we did not have was the right to vote, the ability to vote. But since my release in 2020, I've worked with the organizations, including Out for Justice, Sentencing Project, Maryland Justice Project, many of these organizations who made sure that I knew what my rights were. I have a T-shirt on that helped. We walked around the city. We walked around the state. We went around everywhere in the state of Maryland, making sure that formerly incarcerated women and men knew that they had the right in Maryland, which was a very privilege that we enjoyed. So I'm saying to you, we have educated ourselves. We inside, we know what's going on. We are concerned with what's happening in our community. Our families still live in the same neighborhoods. We're going to come home and be your neighbors. We're going to come home and be your legislators. We're going to come home and be everything that is available to us. So we want to make sure that while we're inside, we have that right. One thing I want to say is, I recognized early that even though I lost my right to my freedom outside in my community, I did not lose my citizenship. Therefore, I should not lose the right to the amenities of that citizenship, and one of them is my right to vote. Thank you.
Your stories are all inspiring and help educate us as we look at legislation like this. Are there questions for this panel? Seeing none, you must have done an excellent job. And we have two more witnesses. So Yeshua Downey and Nikki Tyree, why don't you come up, and then that will wrap us up here. Yeshua, why don't you start off? You have up to 2 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. On behalf of Campaign Legal Center and at the request of Common Cause, I'm pleased to submit this testimony in support of SB 241. As someone who was born and raised in Maryland with a large family in Maryland and a past felony conviction myself, this bill hits home. I'm Yeshua Downey, the Restore Your Vote organizer at Campaign Legal Center's Voting Rights Program. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit based in D.C. that helps protect and strengthen democracy. Our Restore Your Vote team helps restore voting rights to people with past convictions by providing direct rights restoration services, and we empower community leaders to understand and monitor the implementation of the rights restoration laws. The voter registration process is one of the most significant barriers to voting in the United States, and this is particularly high for formerly incarcerated voters. The rules after voting, after a felony conviction are confusing, and like I did for many years, too many people believe a felony conviction is a lifetime ban on voting. I can't pinpoint exactly where I first learned this, but I've missed plenty of elections not knowing that I was eligible. I've even had friends argue me down, swear to God, and put it on their mama, telling me that I cannot vote with a felony. In Maryland, your right to vote is restored upon release, and this bill will help activate that right and ensure people are registered with minimal effort and without any extra hurdles. It'll make the process easier for formerly incarcerated residents by lowering the barrier and encouraging participation for all who are eligible. Studies show that voting is correlated with stronger, more successful reentry as people feel a sense of belonging and connection to their communities. We all deserve a say in who represents us in office, from the halls here in Congress to local elections that determine who serves on our children's school board. Democracy works best when everyone can participate. Thank you. This bill will be a huge step forward.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Oh, sorry, were
No,
you
that's
done?
it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Downey.
All right.
In between the halls of Congress and the school board are people like us, just saying. We do what we can, too.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Tyree, please wrap us up. Welcome.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kagan and members of the committee. The League believes that this bill is a much-needed restoration process. At the League, it's very common for members to go behind the wall to help and and facilitate those who are currently serving with re-registering and getting back on the rolls. Oftentimes, we are met with rhetoric that their voting information is being lost in stacks of paper, or that they are not being informed in a way that they understand it at all. So if it were not for the volunteers across Maryland, they would not be receiving this information. With the passage of this bill, the right to vote will be restored, ensuring that all those who are eligible will have the right to vote. And it speaks to good governance by allowing interagency communication, improves the process of re-registering while reducing voter frustration, and ensures accurate voter rolls. With that, the League urges a favorable report.
Thank you, Ms. Tyree. Short and sweet. Questions for Mr. Downey or Ms. Tyree? Seeing none, that completes the hearing on Senator Augustine's Senate Bill 241. Thank you all. Before we go to the next bill, since some senators and some witnesses, either here or at home, might have joined us late, I need to just be a little parochial and give a shout out and a welcome to everyone from Leadership Montgomery who's here today in Annapolis. As a graduate of Leadership Montgomery, I know what a great program it is. I also want to acknowledge the people, the leaders from Mayo, the Maryland Association of Election Officials, who are here. They represent the 24 counties and their election leaders. So we're always glad when you have the ability to come and join us. So thank you for being with us. We are now going to shift to Senate Bill 89, and Senator Muse is in the House. Senator Muse, Incarcerated Individuals, Voter Hotline and Voting Eligibility, also called Voting Rights for All Act. So we might see some of the same witnesses on the panel. Michael Pinard, Michelle Whitaker, if you're still here, Antoine Quarles, you're back up. Marcia Briley, you're back up. And then we'll, oh, there are more than that. Let's see. And is there another seat for Trina Selden? Joanne Antoine? I'm just going to keep calling names until all the chairs are filled. Do we have?
All right.
All right, and we'll have a second panel, so it's okay. If you don't get on this panel.
Yeah. Whoever's on the first panel, come on, second panel.
All right.
Come on.
Senator Muse, welcome to EEE or E Quad. It's good to have you here. You may begin your testimony on Senate Bill.
It's always good to be and good to see you. I know you all are working very hard. For the record, I'm C. Anthony Muse. I represent the 26th Legislative District, and my panelist is here, and then there are a few others. This is a very easy bill. It restores the right to vote for Maryland residents currently incarcerated for a felony by repealing the provision in state law that disqualifies individuals from voter registration while serving a court-ordered sentence of imprisonment. Currently, individuals in Maryland's correctional facilities awaiting trial or serving sentences for misdemeanor, they retain their right to vote. In 2021, we took an important step toward ensuring access to the ballot for these individuals. My panelists here with me today supported that initiative and can explain how that works and how we can build upon it by extending voter rights to those who are serving felony sentences. I firmly believe that all Marylanders, regardless of criminal conviction, should maintain the inalienable right to vote. I think that we know why this came about. We know how it's been used to take certain people, or make sure certain people, a certain percentage remain off the voting list. But voting should not be reserved for those who we decide are good or bad. It's a fundamental right that should belong to all citizens of voting age. Our democracy is the strongest when every voice is heard, including those who remain part of our communities despite incarcerations. This bill acknowledges a simple truth. The policies we pass affect everyone, including those who are incarcerated, and they too deserve a say in the decisions that shape their lives, their families, and their communities. Maryland has the opportunity to join states like Maine, Vermont, and others in affirming that justice-involved individuals should not be stripped of their voter rights and civic participation. Disenfranchisement disproportionately impacts communities of color, undermines rehabilitation and reintegration efforts. By ensuring access to the ballot, we reinforce the principles of democracy, accountability, and inclusion. And so for these reasons, Madam Vice Chair, I respectfully urge a favorable report on SB 89. I'll turn it over to our panelists now.
Thank you, Senator Muse. Is there an order you would like these witnesses to go, or should we just work our way down? Okay.
You want to start on me?
Ms. Briley?
All righty. Well, you already know my background, but I just want to reiterate, I'm probably the only panelist that.
Ms. Briley, if you could start by introducing yourself again.
Oh, again?
'cause
Oh, okay.
These are, each bill has a separate video stream, so just a reminder to everybody, you kind of start like it's the first time.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Briley.
All righty. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Marsha Briley Savage, and I'm here in strong support of Senate Bill 89. I submitted written testimony, so I will not take too much time, but currently we expect justice-impacted individuals to return to their communities, pay taxes, and follow laws, yet we deny them the stake in the democratic process that shapes those very laws. In my work, I've seen that voting is a tool for reintegration. When an individual is encouraged to engage in the political process, it fosters a sense of responsibility and a connection to the community. They will eventually rejoin. However, even for those currently eligible, the barriers are staggering. In facilities where internet and mobile devices are prohibited, modern voter registration is nearly impossible. Case managers often spread too thin to provide consistent help. This bill addresses these hurdles head-on by establishing a toll-free voter hotline to ensure meaningful access to information. Denying the vote is a missed opportunity to foster social reintegration. States like Vermont and Maine have proven that allowing the incarcerated vote does not harm the system, rather it strengthens the individual's commitment to society. We cannot expect people to return as fully participating citizens if we have spent their entire sentence treating them as subjects rather than stakeholders. It is time for Maryland to align its actions with its values of redemption and civic participation. I urge a favorable report on Senate Bill 89.
Thank you, Ms. Briley. Let's continue down the aisle if we could.
It's okay. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you all for hearing this bill. My name is Nicole Porter. I'm Senior Director of Advocacy with the Sentencing Project, which is a national research and advocacy organization, but I'm also a Maryland resident and want to urge a favorable report for Senate Bill 89. I've submitted written testimony, so I'm just going to highlight a few of the points in that written testimony that's been submitted, including the fact that along with my written testimony is a letter from the National Voting in Prison Coalition that the Sentencing Project joined nearly 30 organizations, Maryland, national, and non-Maryland state groups in supporting Senate Bill 89. And it is the position of the National Voting in Prison Coalition and the Sentencing Project that no legal system impacted American should be excluded from voting, whether in the community or in prison. I also want to highlight some benefits related to community safety for guaranteeing the vote for every legal system impacted resident, including those completing their sentence inside of a prison. Number one is that voting is fundamental to expressing civic involvement and community belonging, and that is a part of a pro-social norm that can help keep folks completing their sentence inside of in custody to their community as part of that reentry strategy that we've already heard about this afternoon. And also the practice of felony disenfranchisement itself ignores the important distinction between legitimate punishment for a crime and one's right as a citizen. And even if someone is held in a maximum security prison cell, they still have the right to get married or divorced or to buy or sell property. And to the extent that voting is an extension of free speech, can consider that a person in prison may have an op-ed published, perhaps at a greater impact than casting their single vote. So with those elements in mind, I really want to encourage a favorable report for Senate Bill 89, and thank you all for considering this legislation.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. Next, please. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Kagan and committee. My name is Tara Bradford, and I'm the Senior Policy Counsel for the ACLU of Maryland. We urge a favorable report on SB 89. Just to take it back a step, felony disenfranchisement laws were intentionally designed to block the political power of Black and Brown voters in the U.S. by linking the right to vote to the criminal legal system. Maryland's laws date back to 1851. Subsequently, years of over-policing and racial disparities in the criminal legal system have created a clear, desperate impact on the Black vote, and it is insidious and undeniably it is intentional. Even now, Black and Brown people in Maryland are denied full participation in our democracy. Black Marylanders make up roughly 30% of the state's population and around 70% of the state prison population. In 2022, Maryland disenfranchised over 16,000 people, and over 11,000 of those people were Black. Baltimore City is our state's most glaring reminder of the impact of these laws. In 2019, almost 30% of all Maryland prison inmates were from Baltimore, even though Baltimore made up 10% of the population. The thousands of Baltimoreans who were disenfranchised could have had a significant impact on local and state elections, which tend to be decided on the margins. Also, just lifting up the public safety pieces that my colleague from the Sentencing Project already mentioned. Since 2001, Maryland has been slowly chipping away at felony disenfranchisement. And in 2021, we passed the Value My Vote Act, which created an infrastructure for those who are eligible to vote to be able to have access to the vote. This legislation will just add to what we have already started doing. And with that, I urge a favorable report on SB 89. Thank you.
Ms. Bradford, forgive me. I feel like last time I saw you were about 12 years old, and now you are all grown up. Holy cripes. Congratulations, and thank you for your leadership. Congratulations, really. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Kagan and committee members. My name is Michael Pernard. I'm a professor at the University of Maryland. Can you hear me? Carey School of Law, and the faculty director of the Gibson Bank Center for Race and the Law. So we all know that voting is the pinnacle of civic engagement, but we've just heard that throughout U.S. history, there have been various tools used to deny the franchise to Black residents, such as outright bans, poll taxes, and literacy tests. And disenfranchisement based on felony convictions began immediately after the Civil War, when Black codes were enacted to criminalize all aspects of Black life, and more generally, denying the vote to Black citizens was a backlash against the 14th and 15th Amendment. And denying voting rights to Marylanders who are incarcerated is part of that lineage. But beyond race, this bill is important because it recognizes the dignity and humanity of individuals who are incarcerated. This bill values their voices and the mechanics of our democracy. And, you know, voting is a humbling, reflective exercise. It's both individual, right? We vote for ourselves and our states, but it's also collective. We also vote for our communities and our families. And every time we vote, we feel fulfilled and appreciative. We wear our stickers proudly, and we brag to our loved ones that day that we voted, right? We feel that we are part of the collective and who care deeply about today and tomorrow. And denying the vote denies to individuals all that we experience through having the opportunity to vote. And denying the vote to those who are incarcerated is the remaining vestige of carceral disenfranchisement in Maryland, and it is time to remove it. So ending carceral disenfranchisement will bring us all closer together, regardless of our circumstances. I appreciated Senator Muse's point that we are part of the same community, all right, and we should all feel attached to it. So we also urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. And I missed, are you Dr. Pernard or Mr.
Oh, no, I'm not a doctor at all.
Okay.
Just
Okay,
Michael Pernard.
Thank you for being here. Are there questions for Senator Muse or this panel? Seeing none, whoops, seeing one. Senator Brooks.
Thanks for the bill, Senator. Incarcerated individual, how does the bill sort of define that? And does it include people from correctional facilities, just regular jails? And And the state prison?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so that's the death. Okay,
Yes.
good enough. Thanks, Chair.
Seeing no other questions, that completes the testimony on this panel. And Senator Muse, you may stay there or not, as you like. Michelle Whitaker, why don't you come up? Antoine Quarles, sorry. Trina Selden. Joanne Antoine. We still have a few more. Are we filling up those chairs? Okay. Okay, guys, we got a long day today. If we can get ready to get started. Joanne, you grabbing the last one? Okay. Okay?
I guess I'm
All right, sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Michelle Whitaker, why don't you kick us off again?
Thank you, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the committee. My name is Michelle Whitaker. I am the Executive Director for Ranked Choice Voting Maryland. I will keep this short and sweet so that the other panelists who can speak directly to their lived experiences can share more about this. But ranked choice voting, even though our focus, as I said before, is on how we expand and make sure that we have a stronger vote for voters in with their ballot and how to improve that, we also recognize that making sure that the fundamental right to vote is protected and available to all eligible voters is critical to our democratic process. And so we support this bill. We thank Senator Muse for his work on this bill, and we really want to make sure that all eligible voters have the opportunity, have access to what they need to be able to register to vote, to participate in the democratic process. So thank you very much. We urge a favorable report.
Thank you, Ms. Whitaker. Mr. Quarles, you're up next. Somebody give him a microphone, please. There you go. Get right up on it. Perfect.
I'm Antoine Quarles, founder of Hope Baltimore, helping oppressed people excel, and a policy advocate member for Alpha Justice. Basically, Senate Bill 89 is very dedicated to me and is long overdue, stepping towards a promise to help people educate in America and retain their voice has been silent for years. Looking at, like I said, from my lived experience and thinking about this whole process, I was just sitting there thinking, if you could really imagine that people told you you couldn't vote, and then you come home and you get registered to vote, and you able to stand there and learn things. And some of us didn't know how to sign up or anything, but it was other formally impacted that was there to help nurture and coach us through it as a peer model. So this has been happening around voter selection and voters education when we're really getting involved to help and educate at polls. Looking at certain instances when we're educating so many in the inside, many of them really want to vote, but they just why is it that we can't? And we're telling them now, you can. And basically, you serving, one of the great steps that I thought was that, if you're awaiting a trial, that you can be registered to vote. But if you catch a sentence, you couldn't. And I was there was a hypocritical thing. While misdemeanors could register and take in the process. So it was a win-win at that point. But now, as we see how this process is working, many are coming home, they're registering, they're becoming citizens, they're taxpayers, they're living lives, they're owning things, they're teaching their children. We're becoming productive members of society, as it's always said we should be. All we asking that we had the right platform to learn how to do it and coach others too, so they can be citizens just like us. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quarles. The reminder about being taxpayers is helpful as we face budget shortfalls. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Once again, my name is Monica Cooper. I am the Executive Director of the Maryland Justice Project, and it's funny that you should speak about budgets because I'm going to paint a picture. If I was an incarcerated individual, I would want to be able to vote for a leader that would be able to approach the Office of Budget and Management and challenge them on the amount of money that they are spending on the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services for programming. If I was an individual that was incarcerated, I would hope that I would be able to vote for a leader that had the courage to get rid of Corazon, which was the absolute worst health care provider that the Department of Corrections had ever known. Many people had died behind the walls. Thank God they're gone. If I was an incarcerated individual, I would want to be able to vote for a leader that understood that the schools that my children attend, even though I'm not with them, I'm incarcerated, but I still want my children to go to schools that don't have mold. I want my children to go to schools that have heat. I want my children to go to schools that have air. So as an incarcerated individual, again, I would want to be able to vote for a leader that had my best interests at heart. I'm not going to be incarcerated forever. And those same things that I desire upon my release, I desire them, if not more so, when I'm incarcerated. Because while I'm incarcerated, I get to see the bigger picture. While I'm looking at Channel 11, I see all y'all pretty faces on news, and y'all say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I actually get a really good picture of who is who and what is what. And I would love to be able to see people who are incarcerated to be able to select their leadership. They are your soon constituents. They will be your constituents. And if you do right by them while they're incarcerated, woo-wee, they'll do some door knocking for you. So I appreciate your time, and I really think you should consider that, especially during this time when we may not even have another election. Let's get busy.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Appreciate it. Trina Selden, you're back up next.
Back up. Again, my name is Trina Selden, Executive Director and founder of Out for Justice, an organization dedicated to dismantling barriers to reentry and advocating for the rights of justice-impacted individuals. And I'm here today to urge the committee to pass this important legislation that would establish critical protections against racial vote dilution and strengthen Maryland's democracy. So when I came home in 2003, I couldn't get a birth certificate without having a Social Security card, but I couldn't get my Social Security card without having my ID. And these were not just bureaucratic hurdles, they were constant reminders that the systems was designed to exclude and silence people like me. So one of my most painful losses that I experienced was the loss of my right to vote. Even after completing probation, again, I was misinformed and denied the ability. Losing my vote meant losing my voice at a time when decisions were being made every day about housing, employment, public safety, schools, and the very communities that I would return to. I was expected to rebuild my life, yet I was not recognized as a valid participant in a democratic process or in civic engagement, again, which was why I founded Out for Justice. To support people navigating dead ends while trying to fully rejoin society and to challenge the policies that keep justice-impacted people excluded long after their sentences end. One of our earliest initiatives focused on voter registration and education because I knew then that as I know now, that true reintegration requires full civic participation. Our work has always been grounded in the belief that people are more than just their convictions. We helped launch Ban the Box in Maryland, opening doors to employment by removing unnecessary barriers on job applications. That work laid the foundations for later reforms, including the Value My Vote Act, which restored, we urge a favorable report.
Go ahead. No. Finish your sentence, Ms. Selden.
Okay. Each of these victories affirm a simple truth. When people are trusted, included, and given stake in their communities, everyone benefits.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Are there questions for this panel, colleagues? Seeing none, we thank you for your testimony and the leadership you're showing in the
Vice
community.
Chair Kagan, you are so kind.
Oh, you're
I just want to say that your smile lights up the room. Even though I'm over here and you're over there, and I'm not just saying that because I want you to vote for this bill. I promise you. You're really a kind person. Thank you.
You're very kind. Thank you, Ms. Porter.
Absolutely.
Okay, to wrap up this bill, we have Joanne Antoine, Gwendolyn Levi, Kiana Johnson, Yeshua Downey, and Nikki Tyree, and that should wrap us up.
And I think Kiana's stuck in another hearing.
Okay, Kiana might be in another hearing. And one of the things that we do remind people after hearing a lot of witnesses, we want to hear from everyone. Don't feel obligated to take the full 2 minutes. If someone has already said what you want to say, that's a good thing. We have a lot more bills yet today. Joanne, do you want to start? And we'll go up to Nikki again.
Yes, good afternoon. Again, Vice Chair Kagan and members of the committee. For the record, Joanne Antoine, Executive Director of Common Cause Maryland, testifying in support of Senate Bill 89, which would expand access to the franchise to all citizens, ending felony disenfranchisement here in the state. I don't want to to be repetitive, so what I'm instead going to do is focus on one specific provision of the bill, that is the hotline. And it's almost like we've combined two bills in one, but I wanted to make sure that I called attention to it because it is a part of the bill that is needed right now. So, you know, again, in 2021, we established the Value My Vote program where individuals, you know, even a DPSCS facility, they have drop boxes and more. Unfortunately, what we don't have is a process for voters to report issues that are happening inside the correctional facility and for them to reach out to nonpartisan entities to ask questions about the voting process. You know, my hope is that, you know, while we continue to advocate for this bill, that we can look at ways to pull that specific provision. In the House, there was questions, clarifying questions about who would be answering the hotline and so forth. We're happy to work with you. Ideally, that is the state board, a process where individuals are able to call the State Board of Elections, and ideally, they are able to make a free call. So it won't work too well. We know that there won't be someone available all the time, but they at very least are able to call, report the issue, let us know what correctional facility they're at, and what has happened. So with that, we would urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, Mr. Quarles. No, did I get your name? Oh, Yeshua Downey, I apologize.
okay.
I'm so trying to remember everybody's name. Mr. Downey, please, up to 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yeshua Downey again on behalf of Campaign Legal Center, and at the invitation of Common Cause Maryland in support of SB 89. This bill would effectively end felony disenfranchisement, eliminating this racist practice that serves no legitimate purpose in the criminal legal system, and it hinders rehabilitation and reentry. Enfranchising incarcerated individuals is important for democratic accountability because elected officials make consequential decisions every day that directly impact incarcerated voters. Legislators make the laws that incarcerated voters are charged with breaking. The DAs prosecute their cases. State judges adjudicate the cases. Sheriffs and other law enforcement police them on the streets and run the jails and prisons in which they are currently incarcerated. And their exposure to the criminal legal system gives them a major stake in the outcome of public policy, and their participation is crucial if the ballot box is truly to be a site where we hold our election officials accountable. If you look at the history, these laws were proliferated during Jim Crow era with the explicit purpose of undermining the 14th and 15th Amendment. Put simply, it's felony disenfranchisement exists in the United States because of efforts to suppress the black vote. Maryland did not ratify the 15th Amendment until 1973. It was one of the last states to do so. Maryland's disenfranchisement system still carries the legacy of this racist history, as black citizens are disenfranchised and incarcerated at rates disproportionately more than white citizens. It also protects against de facto disenfranchisement and all the confusion and misinformation about if we're even eligible to vote. So in sum, this is Maryland's opportunity to join a growing number of states that are working towards restoring rights to citizens with past convictions. We urge you to take this important step to support it.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. Ms. Levi, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Gwen Levi. I'm a justice-impacted person who served 9 years of a federal sentence at the Women's Correctional Institution for Women. At that time, inside, we talked to our family, we listened to the radio, we listened to TV, and we learned and discussed what was going on in our communities. We knew what was being done at the school boards. We knew what our kids were not being educated. We knew that some of our kids got in the 3rd grade and couldn't read. By the time they got to the 7th grade, they still couldn't read. We learned, we wanted better systems for our schools. We wanted better education for our kids. We wanted better health care. We wanted to make sure that institutions that were inside the prison were doing the things that they were supposed to do. We wanted to make sure that institutions like the Maryland Correctional Institution Maryland Correctional Enterprise, would hire some of us when we got out. A lot of us worked for them for 20 years and we couldn't get hired, only because we couldn't vote for who determined who operated those institutions inside. So we talked about those things. We got frustrated over them. We talked to our families. We told them, make sure you call that senator. Make sure you, one time I was locked up in solitary confinement. My son called Congressman Elijah Cummings, and he talked to the warden, and the warden came and got me out of there because I was there wrongly anyway. But I'm just to say, that's the kind of thing we communicate with our family. We communicate. We let them know there are people out there like you all who are favorable to what our needs are. And so we encourage our family to communicate with you all. We encourage our family to vote for you all. So therefore, if we're inside and we're able to vote, who are we going to vote for? The people who help us, the people who know what's going on, the people who come back and say they're trying to make our lives better while we're inside. Not just wait till we're outside, but while we're inside. You all help determine how we live. So yes, we would be voting for those who help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Levi, and I love hearing stories about my friend Elijah Cummings. Thank you for sharing. Nikki Tyree, please wrap us up.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kagan. Again, I'm Nikki Tyree, Executive Director for the League of Women Voters of Maryland. At the League, we believe that elections need to allow for as much voter participation as possible while also being equitable and representative. SB 89 does just this. Although people may be serving sentences for felony convictions, they are still full citizens deserving of their civic rights. There remains an interest in their families, their communities, and those elected to represent them. More than that, it is impossible to have a robust democracy when so many Marylanders are being locked out of the process. In a time where we are seeing attacks on our democracy and our values, Maryland has an opportunity to be on the front lines of fighting back. Maryland has a chance to end disenfranchisement of our fellow Marylanders and set a standard across the country. To defend democracy, it really takes all of us. We urge a favorable report.
Thank you, Ms. Tyree. Colleagues, do you have questions for these panelists? Seeing none, that completes this panel. That completes the hearing on Senate Bill 89, Senator Muse. Next up is Senator Kagan, who has 4 bills, and I'm bringing up Senator Hester to chair the committee. Senator, you can go right here.
Okay, so this is Senate Bill 132, Senator Kagan, election law affiliated with a party and voting unaffiliated voters.
Thank you, and I think I have one witness with me on that one. If you're okay with calling them up at the same time?
Sure.
It's on that same first sheet, highlighted.
No, I see 4 on there, 132.
Okay, Nikki Tyree.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I just didn't want to do it wrong. So.
Oh, okay.
Please do not press. Colleagues, thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. I have 4 election bills for your consideration today, and I'm proudly wearing my vote pin. So this bill is about almost 1 million Marylanders. And the fastest growing group of voters are those who choose not to affiliate as either Republicans or Democrats. Whether it's because they're not aware that that means they can't vote in primaries, or because it's a little bit of a pox on both your houses, they are choosing not to register with a party. What that means is when they show up on primary election day or in early voting, they are handed a ballot for school board. And if they really wanted to vote for president, for governor, or for or against one of us, they are precluded from doing so. So this bill, which we have heard before, is simply going to give them 16 more days to decide that they would like to re-register, affiliate, and cast a full ballot. So think about if Ms. Tyree and I both show up during early voting. And let's say I'm a lifelong Marylander, as I am, and let's say I was unaffiliated. Let's say she just moved here from out of state. Current law, we both walk in to register, to vote. I come in and I'm given a ballot for school board. She comes in, she can register, affiliate, and vote an entire ballot. That means that these almost 1 million voters are completely left out of the process. In the system, and I'm going to hold up a map that I hope can be seen even from a distance. This is the map of the state of Maryland by legislative districts. And what you'll notice is that most of the state is either bright red or bright blue. 42 of the 47 districts, Senate districts, legislative districts, the winner earned 60% or more of the vote in November, which means that any kind of contested election was in the Republican or Democratic primary. And if almost 1 million Marylanders are not able to vote in a primary, then by the time they show up in November, the decisions have been made. Now, it may be that most unaffiliated voters have no interest in affiliating. They just want to be independent. They want it in the files that they're independent, is what they call themselves, unaffiliated. But it may be that they've moved here from another country or another state and didn't realize that not affiliating would cost them their voice in a primary election. So this simply allows, rather than 21 days in advance, which is current law, when a lot of voters are not yet paying attention to Election Day, it just gives them through the end of early voting. They can't show up on Election Day to change. It has to be during early voting, and they would be able to show up during early voting, ask to affiliate, and then they would vote a provisional ballot, and the local boards of elections would confirm that they are eligible to re-register, that they live in that district, that they were given the correct ballot, and if all of those are true, they would be able to affiliate and cast a full ballot. So, pretty simple bill. There are, let me just, so 16 days. There's 7 states, red and blue states, that allow unaffiliated voters to participate in partisan primaries. 19 states have partially closed or closed, and again, these are red or blue. And this bill, while Nikki is with me here, League of Women Voters, Common Cause, Maryland Legislative, the Democracy Network, and others support this bill. The one thing I just want to flag is this bill as drafted, and thank you, Stacy, for all your work on our election bill, Stacy Goodman, our legal counsel. It is drafted as an emergency bill. I originally thought that we ought to try to have this in place for this June's primary election. I think it's too heavy a lift, and I don't think that we have enough primaries to make it that interesting to voters. So why rush things, cause challenges for our local boards of elections, our friends in Mayo, the Maryland Association of Election Officials behind me. So we are proposing an amendment, I am proposing an amendment to make the effective date October 1 of 2026, which gives them about 1.5 years to do the marketing, to educate the election judges and prepare for the 2028 presidential election primary, where there presumably will be a Republican and Democratic presidential primary that is fairly hotly contested, as well as we have a U.S. Senate race on the ballot and others. So that is the one amendment I would like to suggest. And with that, Madam Chair, if it's okay, I'd like to pass the microphone to Nikki Tyree before taking questions.
Thank you. And thank you, Vice Chair Kagan, for bringing this bill again. One of the pieces that I want to highlight in order to not be repetitive is that what we were seeing is an increase in youth voters becoming unaffiliated. Beyond that, we are also seeing an increase in registered voters who are becoming unaffiliated. We live in a very hyper-partisan time, and many don't believe that either party represents them. This is true also for youth voters. Something that I want to highlight is many of Maryland elections are actually decided within the primary sphere. And when you think about the fact that unaffiliated voters currently make up 25% of our electorate, that is quite a chunk of people to be left out of the process. And what the league likes about this bill is that they would have to still register and still go forth. While we have a position of open primaries, we are happy with the compromise. I know. We are happy with the compromise that the senator has brought forth. The one piece that I do have to respectfully push back against is the amendment that the senator has put before you. The truth is that the league, as well as Senator Kagan, has been talking with SBE as well as LBEs about this bill for a very long time. I do not believe that the cost of a little stress on them is worth continuing to lock out 1 million voters in Maryland, especially when we are facing one of the most controversial elections. So I would ask the senator to, if not take back her amendment, I would ask the committee to reject that amendment. And we do urge a favorable report without the amendment. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Senator and Ms. Tyree. Are there any questions? Okay, let's go with Senator Gallion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Vice Chair, you mentioned about the 42 districts. So that means out of 47, there are only 5 what we could call swing districts in the state of Maryland.
Correct.
Why, if you're trying to help with that and give non-affiliated get more say, why wouldn't you put a bill forward that does like a nonpartisan redistricting commission that looks at these things and actually makes general elections competitive instead of having 42 out of 47 seats determined in the primary? Wouldn't that be a better way to enfranchise these independent or non-affiliated voters to have a real choice in the fall?
Thank you for your question, Senator Gallion. That would be a very different bill than this one.
But the purpose is to get people involved that are not able to, we're basically saying, okay, well, the primaries determine everything, so we need more people to be able to vote in the primaries. Why wouldn't that be something that's looked toward if we're really trying to engage those non-affiliated voters?
So a new map would engage in the primary and the general. It would still not allow unaffiliated voters to cast a ballot in a place that makes a difference. So the map that is being discussed now that was passed in the House, which may or may not, which would or wouldn't be accepted by any court if the Senate were to move forward with it, which I don't believe we should. We're very busy as it is now, would not address access for 1 million Marylanders who would be able to help in 42 districts determine who their legislators, who their representatives would be, and in all congressional districts. So thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Senator Watson.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. So an independent voter is unaffiliated?
Correct.
So nationally, the number of independent voters has been increasing.
Sorry, let me correct myself here. There can be independent parties, but the vernacular that most people use is they call them independents. In Maryland, they're called unaffiliated. They're not a Democrat, they're not a Republican, they're not a Green Party. They are unaffiliated with any other party. So that's why in this legislation, and I try to be really precise in saying unaffiliated. So please go back to your question.
An independent voter would not be subject to this?
An independent voter who is part of,
Well, let me ask it a different way.
Please, go ahead.
There are many people in this country who are just fed up with the extremes of both parties.
Correct.
And they prefer to be independent.
Yes.
And I've spoken to them, and they don't want to be involved with this. You know, they want to do it on their own terms. Does this bill say that if you're a registered independent, this is kind of a forcing function to force you to go Democrat or Republican?
So there's nothing forcing about this. If I'm an unaffiliated registered person who says a pox on both your houses, I don't like the Democrats or the Republicans, you stay that way and you get your ballot for school board, or you don't show up in the primary, you just wait until November. You just are depriving yourself of the franchise. If you want to participate, if this bill were to pass, you would need to come during early voting only. You would need to re-register, affiliate, and then you would be part of that party unless you chose to fill out the forms and unaffiliate.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want to add anything?
Senator Brooks.
Thanks, Madam Vice Chair. How would you address the argument that allowing last-minute affiliation, changes or diminishes the purpose of a party primary, and that, and some folks coming in with the intent just to influence or raid or influence the outcome, and these are non-party members. So that, that seemed like that would be problematic. Go ahead. Oh,
You're done with your question?
I'm done with the question, yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Senator Brooks, that is what some people fear if we had open primaries. To be clear, unlike the League, I do not support open primaries, and this bill does not create open primaries. We would still have closed primaries. So a Democrat couldn't say, ooh, I'm going to jump over, become a Republican, and vote for the weakest possible Republican so that the Democrats win, and vice versa. Republican could not become a Democrat for the purpose of undercutting and picking a weak or flawed candidate. Not that anyone would be that. So this is only for unaffiliated voters who otherwise don't get to express their views in the primary. So no double jumping, just a single jump, just from unaffiliated to D or unaffiliated to R. I want to just, right now, I think I mentioned that currently you have to, if you're unaffiliated and you decide that you want to participate in a primary election, you have to re-register more than 21 days in advance, not later than 21 days in advance. So specifically for the 2026 primary, which we may or may not be including as this bill's effective date, early voting runs June 11 to June 18th, and primary election day is June 23rd. If this bill were to be law, using this example, a voter could affiliate up till June 18th rather than June 2nd, which is current law. So it really is 16 days. It's barely more than 2 weeks to give them an opportunity to be inspired by the candidates, by the ballot measures, by something that's before them, and say, I really want to, not ballot measures, by the candidates, and say, I really want to participate in this primary, and it's worth it for me to give up my unaffiliated status and register. Nothing's requiring that they do that, but if they would like to, they get 16 more days.
Okay, but if they are that influenced and they like the party, why not just become a D?
They would. They would. So once they change, if they
but in
register.
general, they're not allowed to vote as a D?
They would. They'd come in during early voting. They would fill out a form that would have them re-registered, affiliated from unaffiliated to D or unaffiliated to R, and then they would stay in that party unless they proactively changed again back to either unaffiliated or the other party. But they would be able to vote a full ballot for 16 more days.
Can I add on to that just really
yes,
quick?
please.
Yeah. I get what I understand where you're coming from on this.
Right.
But just to tell you, like, there's no statistics out there to suggest that we're looking at a voting block of spoilers. So we would not assume that the 25% of unaffiliated voters in Maryland are somehow all plotting together to join the D party so that they can upend a vote. We're talking about people who are generally really outside of the voting process, whether they are new to the country and systems were different in their previous country, young voters, or people who are already politically savvy enough to know that they don't want to be part of a party. What we're also really talking about here are people who have probably gone through a primary before, realize that they weren't able to vote in the primary. And this we hear every day at the league of people who have registered as unaffiliated and then turn up and they go, oh, I only get to vote the school board. And then they get to the general and they see that the great senator runs unopposed. And not that anyone wants to vote against her, but that, they realize, oh, if I had actually wanted to participate in this, I would have to go back to the primary. There is nothing to suggest that anybody is going to come in, register as a Republican, unregister, register again. That is a lot of paperwork, quite frankly, and we just don't have many stories. I can't say zero, because there's always a couple chuckleheads, but it's just not there to suggest that it's a founded fear.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you very much. Senator Harris.
I appreciate that. So why is there a 21-day in the law currently? Why is there 21 days?
I was not there when time began, when it was put into the law. I don't know if Mr. Demarinis can answer that, but it is current law that it's 21 days.
Right. Yeah, and while he's coming up, the reason why I'm asking that question is obviously we want to tweak that and put it 16 days behind. So obviously there was a reason for 21 days. So what's the 21-day reason? And then what does that affect if we change it to 16 days after?
So, Jared Demarinis, State Administrator of Elections. The 21 days was more for the administration of the elections, right? So there has to be a cutoff point where everyone was able to then get paper rolls to go to the polling places.
Correct.
Printing them, making sure that they're there, and double checking the list because you had all those applications coming in. So it wasn't like, oh, on the 20th day we can hit print. All the applications had to be entered in and then printing out the rolls. So that took some time, making sure that they were available, they were correct. So that's where the 21 days came about. I think then basically at that point there it has stayed. Because the parties were just then used to that. Everyone was used to that time frame there. As you can see, we opened it up for same-day voter registration for early voting and on election day because we have more capabilities now with electronic transfers. But we do help with the pre-qualified list with motor voter and motor vehicles agency.
Got it. Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jared. And I'm just going to remind folks that when you go to vote, the greeting judge person, check-in person, is looking you up in the e-poll books. Everything is electronic. And so literally there can be a last second, somebody who comes in, using my earlier example, registers, affiliates, and votes. And these people would be voting provisionally. I think I said that, but I just want to make sure. So it's not instant and then it just gets tabulated. It does get inspected and make sure that it's legit and qualifies, and then it would be counted.
Thank you very much, Senator Kagan. Thank you to the panel. I'd now like to bring up David Naiman for
David chose not to come.
Okay.
Once he was assured that it wasn't going to be an emergency bill, he decided to save the drive.
Okay, well then, this brings us to the end of the hearing on Senate Bill 132. We will now move on to Senate Bill 4.
Could we do, Madam Chair, would you mind if we do Senate Bill 237?
Yes, we can do Senate Bill 237.
Thank you so much. I'm not hearing you, sorry.
We have a member from Budget and Tax, Senator Hedelman, here for Senate Bill 4.
Okay.
Does that work?
That works.
Okay.
Okay, Carmen, Peter. Senator Hedelman, I don't want you to sit through more of this stuff than you need to then. All right. Senate Bill 4 is next. For the record, Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. You can tell by the low bill number that this bill is important. You can also tell by the sponsor line, this is a Kagan-Ferguson bill. I want to say that I am hoping that this testimony and this bill is a total and complete waste of your time. I am hoping that this bill is never needed and that this is a bit of an education for you all, for us all, for anyone watching from home. But we are facing a perilous situation right now for the 41,000 plus nonprofits in Maryland. So again, Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. The Johnson Amendment, you may or may not have ever heard of it. This is not Speaker Johnson, currently Speaker of the House of Representatives. This is Lyndon Baines Johnson. The Johnson Amendment has been in effect for 72 years, and it provides guardrails and protections for nonprofits and charities around the country and protects them from getting involved in partisan politics. There is conversation on Capitol Hill and in the White House about stripping the Johnson Amendment, removing it and allowing, and I dare say encouraging, nonprofit organizations to get involved in partisan politics. So let's say there's a battered women's shelter, a food pantry in my district. If the Johnson Amendment didn't exist, I might go to the director and say, remember that bond money I got you? Remember that support I gave you? Yeah, I'm not going to do it again unless you endorse me, put me in your newsletter, knock doors with me, tell your members of your board of directors to donate to me. There is a slippery slope that is terrifying. Let me be clear what this bill does, and let me also just encourage you or mollify you. This does not do anything new. This bill only would return us to status quo. If, for any reason, the Johnson Amendment is terminated at the federal level, this says that in Maryland, it still applies. We still protect our nonprofit organizations from getting pulled into partisan politics. We have worked with the Attorney General, the Secretary of State. I want to thank them with the comptroller, and the bottom line is we want there to be no change from status quo right now as a result of this bill's passage. And frankly, as I said at the beginning, I hope this bill is not even needed because the Johnson Amendment is unaffected, and there is no court case, there is no executive order, and there is no congressional action. This does create consequences if a nonprofit decides to wade into, if the Johnson Amendment is stripped, if any nonprofit decides that they want to wade into partisan politics, which we don't want in Maryland, there is mediation, there are hearings, there's judicial review, there are fines, and only after all of those is there the option of removing for 2 years their nonprofit status, which means that anyone who donates to them would not be able to get the charitable deduction, the tax deduction. It's a pretty big hammer because we really don't want them to get involved in partisan politics. If you are wondering, this does not affect advocacy. This does not affect any nonprofit from coming down and speaking for or against any legislation. It does not affect community-based outreach or passionate education of their parishioners, their members, their donors, staff, volunteers on any issue, on any cause. It just keeps them out of partisan politics. Again, that's been the law for 72 years. It is an emergency bill, and that's important. We could have a court case handed down literally any day. And I want to give a shout out to Henry Bogdan, who couldn't be here today. We all know him as our legislative liaison for Maryland nonprofits. Henry has been working on this issue, on this bill, for a year, literally started with bill drafters last February or March to make sure that the words were exactly right. We are a national model There are other states that are watching this legislation, and I'm really delighted to not just have the acting CEO of Maryland Nonprofit, Carmen Marshall, in Henry's stead, but the National Council of Nonprofits, Peter Kirchgraber, is with us, and Peter and Carmen are going to have their expertise here as well. I want to flag the fiscal note. We expect to be zero. We hope will be zero because the Johnson Amendment will not be stripped, and so therefore nothing in this bill would go into effect. There would be some assistant attorney general investigator who might need to be hired to enforce if that's needed, and I think there's a lot more to say on this, but again, I'm going to toss it to these two experts, and I want to give another shout out to Henry Bogdan and to all the many nonprofits who reached out to me, who have spoken out, and many of whom submitted written testimony. Couldn't come down here because they're too busy, but I hope we pass this bill that will never, ever be needed in the state of Maryland or in any other states. Look forward to any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to hand it over to Carmen Marshall, if that's okay, Maryland Nonprofits.
Good afternoon. Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to sit with you this afternoon. My name is Carmen Marshall. I am the interim president and CEO of Maryland Nonprofits, a statewide association representing more than 41,000 charitable organizations working in every county and community across our state. Nonprofits are among the most trusted institutions in America, in American life. They shelter survivors of domestic violence, feed families, care for older adults. They protect our waterways, preserve our history, and strengthen neighborhoods. They show up quietly and consistently wherever the need is greatest. That trust did not happen by accident. For more than 70 years, federal law has drawn a clear line between charitable work and partisan political campaigning. And that line has protected nonprofits from political pressure, protected staff and volunteers from coercion, and ensured that charitable resources remain focused on mission and not elections. Today, that protection is at risk. If federal enforcement of longstanding nonpartisan safeguards are weakened, nonprofit organizations could be pulled into political terrain they were never designed to occupy. Board seats could become politicized, charity-hosted events could turn into campaign platforms, and the institutions people rely on in moments of vulnerability could be drawn into partisan conflict. That would undermine trust across communities, regardless of political affiliation. Senate Bill 4 and House Bill 514 are a measured and thoughtful response. Sponsored by Senators Kagan, President Bill Ferguson, and Delegate Sandy Rosenberg, these bills do not create new restrictions. They preserve existing ones. They simply ensure that if federal protections are rolled back, Maryland charities or religious organizations will continue to operate under the same nonpartisan standards that have guided them for decades. This bills allow for discretion, mediation, and correction, not automatic punishment. And they only take effect if federal enforcement is eliminated. At its core, these bills protect the independence of the nonprofit sector so it can continue to do its good work in serving the public good. Keeping charities nonpartisan does not silence them. Nonprofits remain free to educate, advocate for policy, and engage in civic life. What they cannot do and should not do is become vehicles for partisan campaigning. That distinction has served our democracy well. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thanks very much for the opportunity to testify this afternoon. My name is Peter Kirchgraber. I'm a senior policy analyst at the National Council of Nonprofits. NCN is the nation's largest network of nonprofit organizations. We represent more than 37,000 nonprofits across the country, and other states indeed are watching what we're doing here in Maryland. I'm here today to express our enthusiastic support for Senate Bill 4. Every day in communities across the state, thousands of Marylanders benefit from the work of nonprofits. Our work meets the needs that otherwise would go unmet. We offer programs and services that improve the quality of life, whether it's sports and recreation programs, teaching children to read, feeding and housing people, caring for the sick and aging, aiding veterans, recovering from disasters. The list goes on and on. Nonprofits are free to focus on these missions because for 70-plus years, the federal tax code has kept nonprofits from getting enmeshed in divisive partisan politics. That protection, known as the Johnson Amendment, is now under threat from some in Congress and the executive branch and from federal litigation that could remove this safeguard from houses of worship, leaving all charitable nonprofits vulnerable. Without this protection, nonprofits would face enormous pressure to endorse candidates and to funnel tax-exempt charitable donations to campaign fundraisers. And donors would rightly wonder, is my donation serving the public good or some private political agenda? Trust in nonprofits would erode. In short, losing the protection for nonprofit nonpartisanship would insert partisan rancor and divisiveness into one of the last remaining civic spaces where people of goodwill can still come together, regardless of our political differences, to solve shared problems and improve the lives of our communities. We should be clear that protecting nonpartisanship is not about silencing voices. Nonprofits can and should speak out on moral, social, and public policy issues that impact their missions. Federal law just draws the line at endorsing or opposing candidates for public office, and that's a line that protects the independence of nonprofits in the ballot box. I would note that during previous legislative attempts to weaken the Johnson Amendment, more than 4,300 faith leaders and more than 100 denominations and major religious organizations signed letters urging the protection of nonprofit nonpartisanship. We strongly feel that Maryland law should do likewise, and thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Senator, and thank you very much, panelists. Are there questions? Senator Watson.
How many churches have been seen to violate the Johnson Act in the state of Maryland?
I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know.
Because it's not really enforced. Is that a fair statement?
I don't have that information. I suspect that the Secretary of State or the Comptroller would be able to speak to that. But again, they can have people come and speak from the pulpit. They can advocate for hungry and homeless and battered, and all of that would be unaffected. They do it today. They would continue to do it even if there were no
But you
Johnson.
can't cite a single case where a church has violated this. So why are we even having this discussion? For the fear of what the feds will do?
Yes, exactly right.
And so while Congress has not repealed the Johnson Amendment, the IRS has taken a different stance on it. And basically, churches today can endorse candidates from the pulpit. Is that right?
No.
Do you want to speak to that?
No, that's not right.
I would disagree. So that was written up in Maryland Matters, and I do have documentation on the results of that finding, and I can get that to you if you need it. But we find ourselves in an interesting time. And I don't know how many of you have been to a black church recently, but in the black communities, the church is where education is dispensed on things that impact our communities. And if you are a pastor of a church in the middle of an immigrant community with what's going on, to not be able to say, hey, we have an election coming up, you may want to support folks who are anti-ICE candidates. They can't do that, right?
They can do that. They can do it today. They could do it with this bill. They could do it. That'd be fine. That's not saying vote for Senator Watson.
It's saying who to vote for. If there are only two candidates and one is voting, supports a stance one way and one does it the other.
The bill,
Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead.
The mic.
Right now, you can invite folks to come to your church, have their say from either party, both parties, as long as you open the door for both to come and then allow people to make up their own minds.
can I leave literature there for church members to pick up?
If you allow both groups to do it, the idea is not to promote one or the other, or to support one and oppose the other. It's to allow the education to be had, let folks hear both sides, and then they get to choose.
I just find this, from a church's perspective, to be tone deaf at this time. There is so much that needs to be discussed. And in talking to my pastors, anything that's being done by anybody who's elected that represents a community that violates the book that they all profess should be discussed, and action needs to be taken. Now, I understand the nuanced way Martin Luther King dealt with these issues in the pulpit. He never came out for a specific candidate, but he talked about specific pieces of legislation that needed to be supported. And by inference, you can tell who was supporting that legislation and who wasn't, and what direction the community needs to go. It sounds to me that, just my perspective on this now, that this bill is being proposed, but there is no issue at the moment. And why not wait and do something like this if and when the Johnson Amendment gets struck down?
So
I can, oh, okay,
No, please.
I'll start, which is, Senator, that might require us having a special session. This then is just the belts and suspenders, the just in case. We don't want to be called back. If there's a court case that comes down in May or June, I don't think most of us would want to be summoned back to deal with this one issue. We are trying to be proactive. That's why Maryland Nonprofits and National Council of Nonprofits have been working on this for a year. National Council of Nonprofits is part of a lawsuit on this issue, and making sure that our nonprofits are protected.
According to documentation provided by the Secretary of State, does this require all nonprofits to register through their website so they can administer and do the enforcement on this?
Wait, I'm sorry?
The Secretary of State has put an informational document in that says that they would have to be the enforcing agent of this, right?
Yes.
As they are now.
The comptroller cannot do that. For them to do this, every nonprofit and charity, do they have to be registered with the charitable arm of the state?
Which is current law.
Right, current law.
Not every church is registered.
Except for churches, that's right. Yeah, except for churches.
Okay, but you want to put churches under this umbrella now?
We are in conversations about that because the fundamental goal of this bill is not to change current law. So there's some folks who believe that we need clarifying language on that. The Secretary, Assistant Secretary, Deputy Secretary, I'm not getting his title right, Deputy Secretary of State, and several of us have been in ongoing conversations. So I'm happy to include you in that conversation, Senator.
Don't need
the
that.
bottom line is that we want this to continue.
I understand what you want. I'm looking at the unintended consequences.
Understood.
So churches that are currently not registered through the state would have to pay the $300 because most churches in my district receive donations over the $500,000, right? That's what the law says. That's what the statute says. Silence, I understand. Okay, so what this means is that our churches who are not currently registered with the state would have to pay an annual fee, right? You know, an expense to them, maybe not small, but, I mean, maybe not large, but an expense nonetheless. No one can cite for me any situations where, at least here in Maryland, that this has been violated and action has been taken to strip somebody of their nonprofit status, right?
Right, not every church, churches don't have to register. Churches don't have to file. And so we're saying with this bill, none of that would change.
If you read the Secretary's letter, it kind of infers that we will have to become the enforcing mechanism of this. And there are many organizations that are not in the system, which is why in the letter she put in how much an entity has to pay based on how much donations that they receive. That's fine. I think I've made my points. You guys have answered the question. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Okay, we have 2 virtual witnesses then? Okay, so we just have one, Nancy Sorang.
Nancy, we can't see your whole face. There we go.
Hi, Nancy, can you unmute yourself?
Clarifying language
Great.
on that. The Secretary, Assistant Secretary, Deputy Secretary, I'm not getting his name, in fact, right. Deputy
Nancy, you
Secretary-
need to turn off your
Several
YouTube.
of us have been in conversation, ongoing conversations. So I'm happy to include.
Perfect.
No, she muted
now you have to
herself.
unmute your, sorry.
So Nancy, what you have to do is turn off the YouTube so we don't get the feedback, and then unmute yourself. I'm sorry, it's complicated, we know. Okay, Nancy, looks good now. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Senator Kagan, for putting in this bill and being proactive to protect us from some dangerous federal decisions that may come down. That nonpartisanship has been the cornerstone principle that strengthened the public's trust in the League of Women Voters as an organization known for accurate information about elections and non-biased information about candidates. We're proud to be nonpartisan, and we think that if the Jensen Amendment was struck, we would lose a big part of our reputation and our ability to function in this country or in this context. So I just want to thank you for putting this in, and that's it. I'll keep it short.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much, Nancy. We now have one unfavorable witness. James Vaughn. There's 2. I see. Jonathan Alexander, come on up. And then we'll move to a virtual witness. Please state your name and you are unfavorable on this legislation.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Jonathan Alexander. I am an attorney and legislative counsel for the Maryland Family Institute, and I offer this testimony to you in opposition of Senate Bill 4 because look around. Now is not the time to be quiet. Now is the time to be speaking up. And for many Marylanders, how they vote is inseparable from how they pray and how they worship. They want to hear from God on issues like immigration, poverty, civil rights. Movements for justice often begin with one person alone with God and shares it with their family and then shares it with their congregation. In Bible studies, sometimes they do it casually, sometimes they do it formally. But it's always a part of exercising the right to dialogue between a person's conscience, their God, and their community. Well, SB 4 comes in and turns that upside down. It tells churches and religious nonprofits that if they dare to connect those faith convictions to specific issues, to specific parties, and specific candidates, that every instance of that speech, they'll be charged $5,000. It also forces them to sign a blatantly unconstitutional pledge that says that they do not and will not engage in that type of speech as a condition to register in the state. The enforcers of this bill are basically saying, hey, if you want us to like you, do what we tell you to do. Keep your conversations not just to yourself, but be silent about your political convictions. You know, I'm glad Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, MLK's church in Montgomery, Alabama, said no to that. The Jewish congregation Havath Torah says no to that. Faith-based institutions all over Maryland say no to that. The United States Constitution says no to that. The Maryland Constitution says no to that. This committee also should say no to that by rejecting this bill. Now is not the time to be quiet. Now is the time to be speaking up. Welcome your questions.
Thank you. Are there questions for our witness? Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Always good seeing you. And so what I was alluding to a little earlier with the different stance that the IRS has taken, it was a result of the National Religious Broadcasters suit that went forward. I look at this one way, but just want to get your opinion. Do you think something like this could serve the unintended consequence in these harsh political times we find ourselves in to stifle the Black community and the voices of reason that we need to hear on a regular basis so that we can go out and make informed decisions on a regular basis?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll answer that question and some of the other things that you touched on earlier. And giving credence to what you said, yeah, the NRB decision was a consent decree that said that pastors in particular, religious members of faith, are able to endorse from their pulpit. They can use their pulpit and have official public declarations of who to support. And that is within the family community, as you made the connection to the Black churches, where we often find not just education, civic identification, and also next steps on how to advocate for things that concern the community there. That all historically has happened within the church, and the IRS has recognized that. They've also recognized the chilling effect that the Johnson Amendment has presented in the past. And I think one of the questions you asked is, name me one church in Maryland that's violated this, or one church across the country that's violated this. And the reason you don't have that, the reason you don't have the need for a bill like this, but what the bill does do is sort of hang a sword of Damocles over the pastor and say, hey, we're watching you. Be careful what you say. Be careful what message. This may be partisan. Does not define what partisan is, and it just dangles this threat that we are watching what you're saying, how you're communicating on these issues to your congregates. And that is a far cry from what free speech requires. It's a far cry from what our religious convictions require as well. One other thing that you mentioned, and I'll give credence to it, it's right here within the bill, that this adds churches that currently don't have to register. They now have to register. There's a portion of the bill that says that if they have sort of a benevolent fund, or if they're raising money for missions, or if they're soliciting public funds, this now defines them as being a charitable organization such that they have to register with the state, and also they have to sign a pledge saying that I do not and will not engage in so-called partisan politics. It's a far cry from anything that is necessary for our communities. There's not rampant violations of this. To the opposite, it is the free exercise and free communication within our communities, within our congregation, that really allows the agency and the engine of democracy to work out, when we are allowed to have more speech and not have government hanging over what the pastor is saying and trying to curtail their speech.
Senator Hedelman.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think I heard you cite a decision that had been made that permitted endorsements from the pulpit. Could you say that once again?
Yeah, it's a National Religious Broadcasting Consent Decree, and et al. Versus Long. There was a number of organizations and pastors that says, hey, look, I am communicating with my family, with my church congregation, and it has to be a view of what we think of the church. Oftentimes, the church is viewed as being separate from daily life, but most faith-based institutions, most faith-based Marylanders don't see a separation between their everyday decisions, how they raise their family, how they vote, and what they do on Sunday morning in church. So they expect that when they're receiving teaching on all sorts of subjects, that they'll also receive teaching on the political subjects, the partisan subjects, the issues, the advocacy that is necessary for them to strengthen their faith. And so the decision said, yes, Pastor, you are allowed to be specific about who you like and who you dislike in a communication to your congregation. And the question was asked, well, what if that's done online? What if that's done during publication? And once again, it was yes, you can publicize it. This is your communication with your members, with your family, and you are allowed to do that. And that's where the IRS is going towards when it comes to interpreting the Johnson Amendment.
Thank you.
Seeing no more questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have one witness online. Mr. Vaughn, you're here on SB 4, unfavorable. Please go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, for the opportunity to testify. Can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure.
We can hear you.
Perfect. My name is James Vaughn, and I am speaking on behalf of Maryland Baptists for Biblical Values, representing nearly 200 churches across the state of Maryland. Now, we have submitted testimony and even a historical appendix that just, shows our respectful opposition to Senate Bill 4. But based on some of the discussion that has occurred, I would like to just bring up a couple things within my 2-minute testimony time. So the Johnson Amendment, passed in 1954 as a provision to the U.S. tax code, was not debated. I appreciate the fact that Maryland is looking at this because it's bad for freedom of speech. It conditions speech on government permission, meaning you can speak, but only if it says, only if pastors say the right things, meaning pastors can teach on topics on immigration, on race, on social issues, but we cannot say candidate X or leader X supports a policy that Scripture condemns. That's selective silencing, right? There was a statement on selective enforcement. Well, that doesn't fix the problem because the law would exist on the books and it can be enforced selectively, which equals political leverage if a church says the wrong thing. So the Johnson Amendment doesn't protect democracy. It conditions religious speech on government approval and punishes churches and pastors who apply their moral convictions to real world leadership and application. And so and for these other reasons, and on behalf of the churches we represent across the state, we respectfully request an unfavorable report on Senate Bill 4. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Vaughn? Seeing no, that ends the testimony on Senate Bill 4. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, the Deputy Secretary of State has signed up as informational.
Perfect. We'd like to invite the Deputy Secretary to
Thank
come to the
you.
podium.
Is this okay? I'll be real fast. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Kagan. Just to answer your question first, Senator, it's a little of both. So they wouldn't have to register with us, but they would be then covered by us. So we would be the ones enforcing those entities. But under the bill as proposed, we wouldn't be actually requiring them to register because they're exempt. But they also would then potentially be covered under our jurisdiction when it comes to this provision. And I'm really here for an audience of one, Senator Hedelman. If this does pass, I just wanted you to know that there could be implications with our funding structure because we have a special fund for charitable enforcement. These entities don't pay into the fund and they won't under the bill. So we have obviously a limited bandwidth. We have a lot of charitable enforcement actions to prevent scam charities. And if this goes forward, we don't know if it's going to be triggering a lot of action. So the funds as it's structured now go to the general fund if there's a fine. So we would just hope if it passed, the Budget Committee would track this and make sure that maybe our formula was tweaked. In the written testimony information, you can see the formulas that are set out. One thing to note is we only get the funds $100 out of the $300 fees. So for the largest charities, we get a piece of that. There's some 7,000 charities in that largest tranche, and that's the majority of the funding that we get from the special fund. So if there is more work, we just hope we'd get more funding for that special fund. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Deputy Secretary Laurie? Seeing none, then that ends the hearing on SB 4. Thank you all very much. We will now move on to Senate Bill 236, Election Law, Certification of Elections Supporting Technology, Regulation, Review, and Evaluation. Senator Kagan.
Thank you. Michelle?
Would you like to invite your panel up to join you?
That would be lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Hedelman. Ryan? Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Take the time that you need.
Thank you, Madam Chair, colleagues. Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville for Senate Bill 236. I'm going to start this bill with what it does not do. Ranked choice voting is something that confuses, perplexes, or excites or discourages advocates and elected officials. This bill will not enact ranked choice voting. It will not encourage anyone to enact ranked choice voting. What it does is it says whenever the State Board of Elections is getting new hardware or software, as they are ready to do, that they make sure that it is RCV, ranked choice voting, compliant. As you all know, Tacoma Park since 2006 has had, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville, if I didn't do that. Okay, sorry. Tacoma Park, since 2006, has had ranked choice voting. It has worked very well. Greenbelt has recently started using ranked choice voting. Annapolis, Gaithersburg, Rockville, and others are talking about exploring and debating using RCV. One of the questions that the local municipal leaders ask is it going to be complicated? Is it going to be expensive? All that this would do is take the next step in the budget language that was enacted 2 years ago that said this needs to be a law in order for ranked choice voting to be accessible to any municipality or other jurisdiction that is interested in using RCV. So ranked choice voting is growing in popularity. It has been in other countries, other states, and other jurisdictions. From Colorado to Utah and others, we just want to make sure that everyone can use it easily. Voters intuitively understand the idea of I like this person or this color or this flavor of pie the best, and here's my second favorite and my third favorite. They understand it, but again, this bill would not enact that. There are 2 software systems today. There could be others that are starting tomorrow. We want to make sure that as the state board does their request for proposal, that the vendors that are chosen are RCV compliant. So pretty simple bill. We've got some great testimony in the hearing, and we've got 2 wonderful witnesses here with me, and then any of us can take questions. Ryan, you want to go first?
Sure.
Michelle? Okay.
Hello, members of the committee. My name is Ryan Kirby. I'm the Director of Policy at the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center, providing informational testimony on SB 236 today. The Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center is a nonpartisan nonprofit. We do research and create best practices for ranked choice voting, and we work with jurisdictions across the country implementing ranked choice voting elections. The Resource Center has worked with advocates and election officials in Maryland for several years. As Senator Kagan mentioned, there's been growing interest, and there's been uncertainty about the election technology that might be used to tabulate RCV elections, which is especially apparent now that ES&S, which is the current election vendor used by Maryland jurisdictions, no longer offers RCV counting tabulation software within their system. To conduct an RCV election, voting systems need to be able to design ballots, they need to be able to scan those ballots and generate data, and then process the round-by-round count. Like most election vendors, ES&S equipment is capable of producing and scanning ballots, but RCTab, which is one of the softwares that Senator Kagan mentioned, fills that remaining gap using the data from ES&S to produce the round-by-round count. RCTab is open source and is federally tested. It's the RCV counting software. It only does RCV counting, doesn't touch a ballot, doesn't look at any of that. SB 236 provides a clear definition of election supporting technology and gives the State Board of Elections the needed authority to adopt regulations to certify the equipment. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
And colleagues, if Ryan Kirby looks familiar, he used to work in my office. He was my chief of staff for a couple of years. I was very lucky. He's doing great work at the national level now. Michelle?
Hello, thank you again, Senator Kagan and members of the committee. My name is Michelle Whitaker. I'm the Executive Director for Ranked Choice Voting Maryland. We are a grassroots organization that is focused on improving our elections by giving voters a stronger voice through the use of ranked ballots. As Ryan mentioned, one of the things that we're seeing is that there is a need to make sure that the technology needed for ranked choice voting is certified and vetted, that gives all of our election administrators, from those who are working at municipal elections to county and statewide elections, the confidence and knowledge that this does work and is compatible with the systems that are being used. That's the primary one of the primary benefits of this bill. And as Senator Kagan named, this is not about implementing ranked choice voting. And I would even just stress, you do not need to like ranked choice voting. It is okay if you're on the fence with ranked choice voting. You don't have to, but there are cities and there are counties that are looking at using this or are using it and would want to make sure that they have the right technology. You, as elected leaders who represent our entire state, who help make sure that our state functions and that our city administrators, our county administrators all have the tools they need, this bill is about advancing that. And so I really encourage you to support the bill to make sure that we are supporting our election administrators who are using ranked choice voting or are preparing to use ranked choice voting. Tacoma Park has been using ranked choice voting since 2007 was their first election, with over 20 years of experience and the first jurisdiction in Maryland to take it on. They had to do a lot of work on their own to make it, figure out the tools that were necessary. Greenbelt voted by 67% to move to ranked choice voting. And one of the main questions they've asked is, what tools can we use so we can have the best practices? So I urge a favorable report, and I thank you for the opportunity to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Whitaker. Are there any questions for this panel? Seeing none, we do have two other favorable witnesses signed up.
I think there's one witness in person, Hal Ginsberg, and he had to leave just because of the timing. And I believe Councilmember Valeri from the city of Rockville is in another hearing right now testifying, and so she's not able to join us. But I believe they've submitted testimony in favor, and there is also, I think, 22 letters of support that have been submitted to the committee.
So just to confirm, Danny Schabel is not here.
And Councilmember Shabley from Hyattsville was also unable to join similarly because of the timing. So.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Oh, wait, yes. Great, Senator Brooks.
Madam Vice Chair, administrative burden and costs. I mean, some might say that forcing the State Board of Elections to create, implement, and maintain complex new detailed certification processes for a wide array, of technical tools and whatnot could be burdensome, time-consuming, and costly to the local jurisdictions. How would you address that?
Thank you, Senator Brooks. First off, there's no cost for the local jurisdictions, which is how you ended your question.
Okay.
So there's zero on that. Zero for the municipalities, zero for any county that's thinking about ranked choice voting. I just want to indicate, so I serve on the Election Administration Committee, the EAC, a national certification entity, government entity. I also represent NIST, the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, which blesses all the hardware and software and does very thorough vetting. This just says that we need anything that Maryland would order to have kind of the good housekeeping seal of approval. We're not expecting SBE, the State Board of Elections, to be the experts. We look to the experts. You look to EAC, you look to NIST. So if there are 10 kinds of software, and right now, as Ryan Kirby said, there are only 2. If there are 2 or 3 or 5, and let's say all but 1 are RCV compliant, it just means that Maryland shouldn't order that 1. It can look at, based on quality and reputation and customer service, can look at any of the others, but just not the 1 that isn't RCV compliant. It's not complicated. The fiscal note was a little confusing. I've already been in touch with Mr. Demarinis, our state administrator, and he thinks that with a little bit more time for the effective date, that we could probably figure something else. But this is really supposed to be a very modest bill that just sets the guardrails. And again, this is based on a budget study that was in our budget a couple of years ago. With that, I just want to read 3 lines. From a Ward 1 alderman for the city of Annapolis, one of the cities that's looking at doing ranked choice voting. Harry Huntley said, as jurisdictions like mine, Annapolis, and others across the state explore adopting ranked choice voting, election administrators deserve to have the option of accessing reliable tools that have already been vetted at the state level. We're just trying to make it easier on local folks and give them the reassurance that they're good to go if they
Okay, I
decide to move
just
forward.
pulled up the fiscal notes. That's what, $506,000?
We think that's really high. It says that a new person is going to have to be hired. We don't expect that. But again, ongoing conversations with Mr. Tamarinis. Appreciate, yeah, please.
If I could just also add, many states have jurisdictions using ranked choice voting. They have taken some steps similar to what we're asking here in this bill, where the state board or entity is reviewing and providing approval. Our neighbors in Virginia, they have done similar action, and they are also advancing local option bills for ranked choice voting for any local jurisdiction to be able to use ranked choice voting. So it's not, again, about we need this because if a local jurisdiction is looking at ranked choice voting, providing those tools and making sure that they have that confidence that this tool can be used with what system that they're using is a priority. And it's my conversations with members of the council in all of the cities that are looking at this, as well as talking to former and current election administrators. This is a vital step just to make sure that there's consistency and best practices. So that's the nature of this. It's done in other jurisdictions. Maine has done this. I think Virginia, I'll probably forget, Utah. So it's a similar kind of action that we're just requesting.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Kagan. Members of the panel. So should we move, this concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 236. Moving on to Senate Bill 237. Senator Kagan, would you like to call up your panel?
Thank you. Thanks.
This will be election law, presidential electors, selection and voting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Fourth and final Kagan bill. Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville, doing a lot on elections here today and always. We all have heard of the Electoral College. Current law, current constitution is that that's how our president actually gets elected. It's not based on popular vote. It's based on the electoral vote. The reality is, though, that some people don't cast their electoral ballot in the way that they are supposed to, and I'm putting that in air quotes, and the supposed to is based on the popular vote in their own state. Maryland gets 10 electoral ballots. We have 8 members of Congress plus 2 senators. That's how our number of electoral votes is established. So we have 10 electors. The problem is that in these divisive times, these folks are more and more being threatened, doxxed, stalked, intimidated, and some of them over the years, over the decades, over the centuries have proven to be, quote, faithless electors. And they violate their pledge and vote for the other candidate in a presidential race. There are 24 states and D.C. that currently already have enforceable laws preventing faithless electors. And other states are considering it right now. Currently, Alabama, Illinois, Massachusetts, Oregon, South Dakota are working on it right now, and there may be others than that. This is going to protect electors from coercion, but if someone is coerced, if someone, God forbid, dies or can't show up to cast their ballot, or is tempted to vote for another candidate, this bill simply creates an alternate slate so that someone who is, again, casting their ballot incorrectly, and I continue to use that in air quotes, for the candidate who wins the plurality of the vote in their state, in Maryland, there would be an alternate elector at the ready. The first person, the primary elector, would be deemed to be excused from their responsibility, and an alternate elector would be brought in, would be standing by, and would cast the ballot that was supposed to be cast. All ballots are cast in Annapolis on the first Wednesday after the first Tuesday in December. Those are overseen by Mr. Demarinis, who is presiding over the process, who makes sure that it's done accurately, correctly, fairly, and transparently. It is then ultimately brought to the U.S. Congress, where they are presented, and that is how, with the counting of the electoral vote, how a president is officially, legally established and announced. And that was, sadly, on January 6th, 2021, when that insurrection happened, when that was what the folks were hoping to prevent, was the counting of the electoral votes and counting fake electoral votes. This is not dealing with fake electoral votes. This is just counting, addressing those who vote incorrectly. In Maryland, this has happened in 2 different elections, albeit a long time ago, when there were 2 electors who were, quote, faithless and voted for the candidate they were not supposed to be voting for. In Virginia and Pennsylvania, they have had many faithless electors, all 23 and in Virginia, and all 30 in Pennsylvania. Again, this is going back a long time, but this is not hypothetical. In 2016, there were a record-breaking, that's the most recent, there were a record-breaking of 10 faithless elector, according to Fair Vote. So again, this just established a process so that it goes accurately the way it's supposed to go. There's a 0 fiscal note, and this has been endorsed by all sorts of folks. You have the testimony from Brennan Center for Justice, Common Cause, Fair Vote, League of Women Voters, Sierra Club, National Popular Vote, Protect Democracy United, and others. So with that, I urge a favorable report on SB 237, and I'm really glad to have a nationally known expert, David Weinberg, here with us today with his testimony. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues.
Go ahead, Mr. Weinberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Kagan, distinguished members of this committee, for the opportunity to testify today. My name is David Weinberg. I'm here as a policy strategist for Protect Democracy United, a cross-partisan 501c4 that seeks to strengthen our representative institutions. We commend Senator Kagan for championing Senate Bill 237 and ask you to approve it with the sponsor's amendment. The founders originally meant for presidential electors to be autonomous decision makers, but quickly realized that this approach was untenable, so they revised it with the 12th Amendment. That step acknowledged and facilitated the Electoral College's emergence as a mechanism not for deliberation, but for party line voting by presidential electors, as SCOTUS put it in unanimous rulings 6 years ago. Those rulings upheld the right of states to bind and replace their electors so none of their electoral votes get wasted due to faithlessness. The most recent attempt with 10 in 2016 is a spike that hints at a problem that could become calamitous. Contemporary electors receive incessant letters, phone calls, emails, lawsuits, and death threats. Threats and acts of political violence have dramatically increased in our country, but consider how much worse such pressures might be against someone who for 6 weeks has the power to overturn a presidential election. Lately, we've also seen federal powers abused to coerce law-abiding Americans across the country. It would be naive to presume such coercion won't also be directed at electors the next time there is a sore loser. Thankfully, states can pass laws to automatically replace any faithless electors. Roughly half of all states now have such laws. This is modeled after the gold standard of this, a Uniform Law Commission text. Passing SB 237 this year instead of leaving it to chance next year would prod other lagging states to close this gap before it's too late, and it would allow plenty of time, if any implementing regulations are needed, before the next presidential cycle starts and slates of electors are nominated. Thank you very much. Encourage your favorable vote.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, are there any questions for this panel? I had one. I was just reading online in your testimony, there's that nice map which shows lots of different levels. What would you say about Maryland in that map?
Sure. Thank you very much, Senator. So this map, included in the written testimony, lists states that have robust faithless elector protections in place in their law versus ones that don't. The states in dark purple, 24 states, in addition to DC, have an automatic replacement provision on their books, so that way if any of their presidential electors fill out an electoral vote electoral vote ballot with a faithless vote, just disrespecting, not reflecting the will of the voters from their state, that presidential elector automatically gets removed and replaced with someone who will cast an electoral vote that reflects the will of that state. So the state and the state's voters don't lose any of their electoral votes in the Electoral College. Maryland is one of 12 states listed on that map as having a weak law against presidential electors. And in particular, that is a provision in the statute pertaining to how the presidential electors cast their electoral vote ballots when they convene. In Maryland, our law has a clear intent for them to act faithfully, but no effective mechanism for ensuring that. So what our law says is they shall cast their electoral votes for the winners of the election. But there's no mechanism to ensure that if in the 6 weeks between election day and elector balloting day, if that individual was subjected to terrible coercion by a state and by say a federal actor or a non-state actor into casting a faithless vote and not following that part of Maryland state law, there's nothing to ensure that we as Marylanders keep our full state's electoral votes for the winner of our election. I will mention that today, Oregon and Connecticut each also had legislators take a positive step in this direction. Connecticut, the Committee of Jurisdiction, agreed to introduce legislation on it this session. And in Oregon, the Senate majority and minority leaders championed a bill that was passed out of committee unanimously, and they issued a press release about it being an important election protection initiative in their state.
Thanks for the presentation. Has there been any situations yet where those electors have gone rogue?
Sure.
I'll do that. So, Senator, as I said, in Maryland, there were 2 different elections when 2 electors in Maryland went rogue, to use your term.
Yes.
And in 2016, 10 around the country did it, not in Maryland, but 10 around the country. This is not a hypothetical. And
Right.
as David said much better than I do, we're in a more divisive time now than ever, and the fear is that electors are getting coerced, threatened, bullied, and in that 6-week period, we want them to keep their commitment, keep their pledge. They would have to sign a pledge of fidelity, and if they don't, then they would be removed automatically, and their alternate would be brought in.
Right. Thanks for the bill.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, that brings us to the end. Oh, we do have a virtual witness. Thank you. Ms. Bierman, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you have 2 minutes.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Carrie Bierman. I'm Legislative Counsel at the Uniform Law Commission. Thank you so much to Senator Kagan for her leadership on this effort. Senate Bill 237 would adopt the Uniform Faithful Presidential Electors Act in Maryland. David and Senator Kagan did such a wonderful job of explaining the act, and we've also submitted written testimony. So just one thing that I wanted to hit on is that this bill really requires each elector to execute a state-administered pledge of faithfulness. If the elector attempts to vote in violation of that pledge, the statute will treat the elector as having resigned from the office, thereby creating a vacancy. Senate Bill 237 would then provide a mechanism to fill that vacancy promptly with a faithful elector so that the state's electoral votes will reflect the will of Maryland's voters. The Uniform Law Commission drafted this bill this Uniform Act in 2010. Since then, it's been adopted by 13 jurisdictions, with 5 other states, in addition to Maryland, considering it this session. And just a little bit about the Uniform Law Commission. We are a 134-year-old state-supported organization. We're a group of volunteer attorneys that aim to provide states with nonpartisan, well-conceived, and well-drafted legislation that aims to bring clarity and stability to areas of state statutory law. Our commissioners are volunteers, and donate thousands of hours of legal work to research, draft, and promote enactment of uniform state laws in areas where uniformity is really desirable and practicable. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for our virtual witness? Senator Watson.
Hi, thank you so much, Carrie. Just one quick question. So this bill, the intent is who you say you're going to vote for as a pledge is going to ensure that that person votes for that individual, right?
Yes.
So from the time you file to do that, and let's say you have a candidate that implodes, do you have to be released so that you don't have to make that vote? How would that work? And I'm thinking about if we were unfortunately in a situation where we found out our presidential candidate could not perform his or her functions because something, came out medically or something. How would that be handled?
Carrie, would you like to take this, or shall I?
Oh, David, if you would like to address it, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Thank you so much, Senator Watson. This is a very important question because a couple of states that have drafted laws on this topic haven't given thought to that and have therefore had to go back and amend it. So for instance, Arizona has a bill moving through their Senate right now to basically make sure that they account for that sort of contingency. Thankfully, there is that kind of contingency written into this bill. I'm looking for the exact part, but basically it is intended to address if there, for instance, heaven forbid, if the winning candidate for president or vice president were, for instance, to die between election day and elector balloting day, which might not even be as, God forbid, far-fetched as just a matter of chance, given last cycle there were 2 assassination attempts.
Or indicted or something other horrific thing.
And so there's provision for death in here. I believe there is provision for withdrawal as well. Yes, okay, it's section 1, it's page, in the sponsor's amendment text, it's bill page 3, line 27. And it says that if after the nomination of the candidate, but before meeting of the electors, if the candidate dies or withdraws, then the presidential elector's oath doesn't bind them to the withdrawn or deceased individual. It binds them to the successor candidate for that position nominated by by the winning candidate's party. So that way, you don't have what happened in, I think it was the 1872 election, where the losing candidate for president died, and their electors split like 5 different ways. So this would ensure that the party's successor is, the ticket that wins is the ticket that wins, which is how we think of our elections intuitively.
So this is fascinating. So one other question. So say the last presidential election, something happened to then President Biden.
Yeah.
And we would be forced to have supported the vice president. Is that right?
Well, not necessarily. It depends on who the party's chosen successor candidate becomes in that moment. Now, in some instances, a vice presidential candidate is considered sort of the natural successor to a presidential candidate. In some instances, they're picked for, for other symbolic reasons and not considered sort of up to the task. And it would be up to the leaders of that party to decide who their successor is, which is in effect how it operates already.
Okay.
And this would just ensure that the presidential electors aren't bound in a counterintuitive way, but rather are bound to act in a way that makes sense and is coherent nationally.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you all. That now brings us to the end of the hearing on Senate Bill 237. Moving on, our last bill of the day is with Senator Ellis. Senator, we invite you to come forward, and you have one person on your sponsor panel, Robert Doyle.
Thank you, Chair Hester and members of the EEE Committee. sorry. I'll let you.
We're just figuring out our translation. It's ready to go. Okay. Senator, go ahead and take the time that you need.
Thank you so much, Chair Hester and members of the EEE Committee. I'm Senator Arthur Ellis, representing District 28, Charles County, presented Senate Bill 73, Election Law, Polling Place Procedures, voting by elderly voters and voters with disabilities, which we call this the Accessible and Expedited Voting Act of Maryland. Thank you for the opportunity to have a second bite of the apple. Presented this bill before this committee last year, and it didn't move out of this committee, but the cross file passed the House and came over here and also did not move out of the committee. There is very little or no opposition to this bill. A lot of advocates come in to support this bill. This bill will improve access to voting by creating a training program for election staff, creating guidelines to improve accommodations, and collecting feedback from voters to improve the guidelines and accommodations for voters. The idea behind this bill popped up during the last election, presidential election cycle, and we have so many voters waited in line throughout the day, a long line, and quite a few elderly voters, individuals with disabilities, veterans, were forced to be in these long lines. And they asked me, because I was working the polls, they were like, hey, is there a special line we can get in? Is there any seating area we can go to sit while we wait our turn to vote? And basically, I asked the election judges, and they said no. There is nothing requiring us to do that, and we really don't. And I said, well, wait a minute, this is the access issue. Came back, worked with the lawyers here in Annapolis to craft this legislation to require the State Board of Elections to work with the local boards to make sure our elderly and disabled individuals have access to accommodations as they choose to come out to enforce their constitutional right to vote. And I thought it was a no-brainer, but I really couldn't understand why this bill couldn't move out of this committee. We received support from the Maryland Catholic Conference, Maryland Federation of National Active and Retired Federal Employees, Maryland Continuing Care Residents Association, the People on the Go Maryland, Disability Rights Maryland, Common Cause Maryland, AARP Maryland, Maryland Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition, and so many more. Because access to voting is really something that's necessary, and most of the members of these organizations need access and accommodations to really make it to the polls. The foundation of a democracy is in the voices of its citizens. If your voice is your vote, a strong democracy depends on a strong voting system where everyone has access to make their vote count. To this end, various activists throughout American history have fought to realize this right in America for women, for African American and people of color, for people with disabilities. Today, we continue building on this progress through Senate Bill 73 to improve access to our voting system for those who are elderly and or who have disabilities. According to a 2023 survey reported by the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, voters who have disabilities reported difficulties with voting more than those who do not have disabilities. The report notes factors like difficulties waiting in line, getting inside the polling place, the reading, seeing, or writing on the ballot. All of those are access issues which voters with disabilities have barriers to the voting process. Additionally, The Election Assistance Commission report notes that people of color who have disabilities report the highest rates of voting difficulties and the highest average wait times when voted in person. Senate Bill seeks to remove barriers to voting for elderly individuals and those with disabilities by addressing long wait times that disproportionately affect these groups, insufficient accommodations at polling places, lack of awareness about available voting assistance, training gaps among election judges on how to assist elderly and disabled voting. I know some folks say to me here, why can't these folks who have trouble voting just mail in a ballot? We have mail-in ballots available. You know, I think that is kind of a condescending approach to it. Individuals should have the freedom of choice. We work hard in this body to give freedom of choice to so many groups of individuals. And if someone like going out to vote, they should be offered the accommodations instead of saying, hey, it's your fault. You could have just easily mailed your ballot in. And some people really don't trust the system. They don't trust the mail-in system. They don't trust that putting something in a mailbox controlled by someone they believe in the opposite party would be effective in getting to the location where those votes are counted. And so a lot of trust issues with individuals working to delay the mail during the election period. So a lot of individuals with disabilities, elderlies, they really want to show up. They really want to be able to push that button and to cast that vote. Therefore, colleagues, I urge a favorable vote on Senate Bill 73. Thank you very much for your attention to this important matter.
Thank you very much, Senator. Moving on, we have Mr. Robert Doyle.
Thank you. Good afternoon or evening, Chair Kagan and members of the EEE Committee. I'm Bob Doyle. You missed that earlier. I'm Bob Doyle, Chair of the State Legislative Committee of the Maryland National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association, called NARF for obvious reasons, representing approximately 317,000 federal retirees and active members in Maryland, and we're standing strong in these times, I assure you of that. For the continuing benefit of all Maryland seniors and disabled persons, we support and ask you for a favorable report on SB 73. The right to vote, which is a fundamental right and a foundation of our democracy, remains more important now than ever. We endorse the Maryland League of Women Voters' view that democratic government depends upon informed and active citizen participation, and that voting is a fundamental citizen right that must be guaranteed by law. Senator Ellis talked about the elements of the bill, and clearly the bill will give election judges extra duties. I have no doubt election judges and workers in Maryland do their best to help voters who need special assistance. I've been an election judge before, and he's right that we didn't really get good training in these areas. In 2024, I saw what he was talking about. I saw the long lines at an early voting place in Anne Arundel County. The long lines are a good thing, but not giving people some place to wait is bad. Senator Ellis last year said people needs to have a choice on the way they want to vote and not to be insulted by election judges or anybody else telling them to go away, you're not needed here. We certainly agree. We respectfully ask that you give a favorable report to SB 73 as an important step in ensuring that Maryland seniors and persons with disabilities can maintain their fundamental right to vote and participate fully in our democracy. Thank you for the opportunity to participate today, and thank you everyone here for staying.
Are there any questions for these two witnesses? And then, Memoria, do we have one virtual witness? They're not there. Seeing no questions, that brings us to the end of this bill hearing and the end of our day. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.